Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 225. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
Not too bad. A little sniffly, so I'm a little concerned. Only because it's just like, man. I don't think I'm like sick, but I feel like I'm like slightly encumbered, you know? It's
AIDS?
gonna be one of the yeah, it could be AIDS. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows at this point? Might as well.
Well, you said you were concerned. Are you concerned that it's COVID? Is that what you're concerned about?
I just don't like being mildly sick. You know, if I'm gonna be sick, I want, just give it all.
Yeah, you want to be full-blown bedridden.
Yeah, I want to be vomiting and shitting at the same time.
Catholic priest doing Our Fathers over your body.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know. It's such just that slight sickness is such an annoyance, because it's just like, it's like I'm 95% of the way that I normally am. And it's just like, wow, what a cumbersome little but important 5% not to have, you know? So
it's interesting, because I also fear when you feel it coming on, the day before, and you're like, I'm getting sick, and you know it, and it's coming, and it feels like there's nothing you can really do about it. Very disheartening.
Yeah, it's just an inconvenient. Like, I'm fine when I'm sick, because it's just like, oh, cool, I'm just gonna make soup and watch TV.
Right.
But like now it's like, I can still do things. I just feel slightly shitty.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
That's an interesting point. I'm gonna knock on wood, because I haven't really been sick in a while. That makes a lot of sense. I think the reclusive Colin is a little overblown, in the sense that I live in a neighborhood, just like a suburban neighborhood. I'm always walking around my neighborhood. I'm in my backyard. I'm outside, but I'm not around a lot of people.
Right.
Family members. So I don't interchange with a lot of people. And so maybe that helps me not get sick. But Chris, nonetheless, it's good to see you. You look very handsome today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. How are you today, my friend?
Doing pretty good. I have a new lunch ritual. It's not really much of a ritual, but I'm really into making like scrambled egg sandwiches. And I've been doing this like every day for the past 2 weeks.
What do you put them on? What, like on bread?
Just on bread.
Interesting.
Pepper jack cheese.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A sauce.
Huh. Like the Polynesian.
And it's, not the Polynesian, just the regular.
Okay, I got you.
I do have the Polynesian sauce. I think it's a little mid, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
Yeah. But so other than that, I'm I'm kind of full, but it's okay. I woke up today. I'm always excited to do this show, but there was something special in the air. I thought, man, really looking forward to Sacred Symbols today.
Wow. Look at you.
Normally I want to die when I wake up.
Yeah, I mean,
not really.
Just generally speaking, I totally agree with you. I'm feeling good myself. Jets 4-2, by the way. 4-2. Can't even believe it. Don't even know what to do with myself. Absolutely destroyed the Packers last week. Aaron Rodgers, who is a player I like very much. Very interesting to see. So feeling good about football, excited about the fall. My birthday just happened. Engagement photos. Dustin, I saw you celebrate my engagement photos. You have a whole new cache of Colin in high res, like 4K. I mean,
the memes are coming in already too.
Yeah,
I saw there's some very good ones
coming in hot over there on #memes over on Discord. Remember, the more offensive, the better. Patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access to Sacred Symbols. And of course, welcome to Sacred Symbols, our PlayStation podcast up weekly. You can find it on podcast services, YouTube, etc. But you get it 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon, like more than 12,000 of you do. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. We could not do it without you. You can access our Discord through Patreon, submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas through Patreon, access to a Q&A, get your name in the credits. And of course, Sacred Symbols Plus twice a week. Custom Alex wrote in, as you guys can on Patreon, says, hello there, CDC. First time writing in. Just joined to support you guys because you are the best gaming podcast available. So especially at such a low price, unlike other places where their starting tiers are $10 and $20. Well, thank you for being here. Our starting tier will never, ever be $10 or $20. If inflation and the economy gets so bad that we have to raise prices to $10 or $20 for the $5 tier, let's say, I would assume we're in a world war and we have a bigger situation than what's going on with Sacred Symbols. He says, my question is, of all the Sacred Symbols Plus episodes you have released, do you have a favorite topic you talked about? that you think is a must listen or best shows in the range of Sacred Symbols. Thank you for the years of content and can't wait to support you for years to come. Thank you, Custom Alex, for writing in. I wanted to read this. This felt very timely because we just had Gene Park from the Washington Post back on the show. And of course, Gene came on the show months ago and got a huge problem from the industry about it. Everyone giving him a hard time. So what did he do? He put his 2 middle fingers up like a man and came right back on the show. And we did it again. And it was awesome. We talked for 90 minutes. And I wanted to say, I thought that Gene Park episode was one of the great episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus. It was very fluid. Like, I wish Gene was available and we could afford him. I feel like he would fit perfectly. I get that vibe from him perfectly on Sacred Symbols. But he's very welcome with us. That was a really fun episode. I just did an episode about G4, and we're going to talk a little bit about the fall of G4 soon. We did the Sacred League, the first episode of that, which is awesome. One on remakes. I have G4 in here twice. I don't know why that is. Maybe I'm just really excited to talk about it. Sacred Symbols Cross Defining Duke. I did a call-in episode. Chris and Dustin are doing a call-in episode for Saturday. So the day after this goes live on Patreon, we're going to keep these going. Sacred Symbols Plus is hot right now.
Yeah.
Hot. But you know what else is hot, Dustin? New merch. It's time. LastStandMedia.store. New merch is available.
Yes.
Sacred Symbols sweatshirt. Do you have it?
For the video listeners, the video watchers. Sorry for the audio listeners. I'll have to just describe. We've got the Sacred Symbols hoodie with a nice logo. It's more subtle than our last hoodies. That was some feedback we got. These will be available. This is part of the fall collection, is what I'm calling it.
Yeah. Totally.
We also have these lovely beanies, both in black and blue. They've got our moon logo on it. I'm really excited about it. Now, Colin, something very important. He's back, but he's not the same.
Right.
We've got Pope Benedict 16,
Pope
like Final Fantasy 16.
Pope. I think, unfortunately, this might have been the Pope that was in the Nazi youth, in the Hitler youth. Let's ignore that completely, and we'll just have him here doing the sacrament, and of course, magnets.
That's right. Made by my mom.
That's right.
So handmade. She has like a machine where you can like press down the stuff in the magnet or whatever. It's very nice. So
we got a lot of good stuff coming.
Quick note about these the Sacred Pope, the Sacred Sacrament sticker. There's not very many of them. They are limited run. In fact, I got 100 of them, and I gave one to Ben, and I have 2, and then the rest.
So that means there are 97.
97. Colin's
they're
favorite
too
number.
Small. I will say that they're too small. I want the next ones to be a little bigger.
Yeah.
You know? These I appreciate because like you could subtly use it on your car and no one will really know what it is until they go up to it.
Yeah. I mean, we could make a giant Pope sticker. Maybe we'll just get like 30 of them made, and they're really, really big, and they cost $10 or $15. And then that's actually an interesting idea. We might have to do that. But
so the magnets come in packs of 4, so you don't have to choose your logo. You just get all 4 of the core logos. Shipping free for stickers domestically, and yeah, that's it. We appreciate you, and I keep getting pictures and like people sending pictures of the stickers in different places, which is fun to see. I'm not encouraging you to do that, but I'm not discouraging you to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just not saying you shouldn't.
Yeah,
that's it. So thank you for your support over there, and of course the Clips channel is going strong. What is it? tinyurl.com/sacredclips. Is that right?
I believe so. I will put that in.
Yeah, go ahead and type that into a browser.
tinyurl.com. I'm the one who made it, so I should remember, but I can't remember anything. It does work. And here's the thing, Colin, there's these new YouTube tags. Remember how we were talking about that? We can't get Last Stand Media. Someone has it.
What?
How do we do that? I don't know. YouTube?
I own the trademark to it, so I mean, I guess we have to just figure out how to submit that claim or whatever.
Yeah. But that's unrelated. Sacred Symbols Clips. Thank you guys for all the support the past week. We got 1.82K subscribers. So
nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Very well done. All right. That's all that we have to catch up on. And that's it. That's the entire show. Thank you for tuning in and being here.
Yeah. Later, guys.
Now, I was surprised this week. Not a lot of good fodder for stretching our legs. Not that it hurts that we get right into it this week. But there was one question. Matthew O'Sullivan wrote in and said, "Why is it always the Europeans?" That's all he said. And that was what he earnestly said in his thread. He said, "Why is it always the Europeans?" Chris, what do you think?
I don't know, man. I think they just got a lot going on. Their queen's dead. It's there's a lot going on over there.
They got a prime minister right now too.
Right. right? Liz Truss.
That's right. Yeah, no prime minister. It's gross to me, by the way, that they have a king now, because it feels fake as fuck. Like, it feels like the fakest thing in the world. Like, oh, the King of England. Are you kidding?
Yeah, it
sounds like a joke.
It is true. Well, I just find it. Listen, I love our British friends, and it's an amazing country, an amazing empire, shell of an empire, I guess. And I don't mean it as an insult. It just is by nature of what has happened over the years. But you got to get the monarch. It's a little weird, right? Like, it's a little weird. I appreciate tradition. I like it, but it's weird.
It's goofy, is what it is.
Yeah,
it feels just like a Saturday morning cartoon country, or like an entire continent that just doesn't feel right. Maybe step into the modern era a little bit. You already have, really. I mean, the Queen's really just kind of just a figurehead.
Just a figurehead. Yeah.
I have a question for the Europeans. So I mentioned a few weeks ago, I've been watching this YouTuber named Beard Meats Food. He does competitive eating challenges. And a lot of these ones he does in the UK, because he's from the UK, have an item on the breakfast menu that I find highly disturbing. And it's called blood pudding. And it's these circular discs of some kind of substance. I don't know what it is, but it has blood in it. So they're kind of like a dark purplish, reddish color. Why are we doing this? Why are we eating blood?
Have you looked at British food? I mean, have you seen it?
I don't want to after this. I don't want to see any more.
A lot of it is not that bad. Like, I like bangers and mash, like baked beans and eggs and toast and whatever. Like, that's good shit. I don't mind it. It's just a little, shepherd's pie. That's good. It's very low ranking, right? Yeah. I can eat better at a strip mall down the street from me. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I have a British friend staying with me now for a couple of. I actually met him playing like Halo 2 in 2006, and this is the first time I've met him. It's been kind of crazy, but he's constantly complaining. It's like, where's the beans on toast? And I'm like, we don't do that here because we have standards.
Yeah, we don't.
You just do that. There's nothing. Why would you? We have bread and we have baked beans. Make it yourself. Like, it's not. You don't have to order that at a place.
Yeah, we're not. It's like it's their avocado toast.
Ugh, I can't stand that either. Like, it's just, I don't know.
But Britain, we're gonna get to you. Like, I feel like we will be inside Great Britain in 2023. Like, I feel like there's literally no doubt about it in my mind. So we're gonna see you real soon. By the way, there's nothing planned. I'm just telling you from the gut.
Yeah,
we do have a live show to talk about soon, though.
Ooh.
But where could it be? Where could it be? Where? It's like Carmen Sandiego. I'm out of my mind today. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you seem to be. You're on one, man.
Yeah, I really feel like I am.
There's like an unhinged energy coming off you. I could feel it.
Nice. That's excellent.
Good.
So why is it always the Europeans? I don't know. It just always does seem to be them, right? They're having a war. They're cold. That's enough. Like, I feel like we've heard enough now. And I am interested in this Liz Truss thing, not political at all, just because it's super interesting that they have, I think the prime ministership as it is today goes all the way back to the early 1700s. And in that 400-year period, she is, or I guess that 330 whatever year period, she is the shortest reigning prime minister, or shortest in office prime minister, which is so crazy when you think about records. It's like setting a record in the NFL if the NFL was 350 years old. It's like probably the older it gets, the probably more unlikely it's going to happen. So, and isn't it interesting? Just a little piece of cosmic trivia. Queen Elizabeth II, there's the little, the prime minister goes and speaks to her. There's like, the traditional back and forth or whatever, and the approval and all of this. And she's the longest reigning monarch. And then Liz Truss is the last one she kind of sees through. She dies. And then Liz Truss is out after a little. It's like it's a reversal.
Yeah.
Now everyone's going to die.
Oh, man.
Like this.
It's getting scary out here.
I know. Moving on. Quick correction. RU46N2 wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Ones. I found a correction in this stream. Colin at the end of the stream, I don't know what you're saying stream for, I think you mean the podcast, states that Weird West is coming out. That game is already out, made by Rafael Colatonio, founder of Arcane Studios, who left after Prey was made and now formed Wolf Eye Studio. Kick-ass game, highly recommend it. The game Colin was referring to is Evil West. Keep up the excellent content. Yes, you're absolutely right. You have a postscript about something with Raph playing a bass. I don't plays in a band, not bass. I don't know. I don't care about any of that. Thank you for writing in. 2 quick things, and then we're going to move into some things to talk about, some items to talk about. PlayStation Stars. Been seeing some people talk about this. I just want to declare this right now. The most inoffensive thing I've ever used in my life, nothing to complain about. Just want to throw that out there. I like it. It's kind of cool. I'm on the app. It's like my number's going up. I'm doing little things. I got a trophy, so the number goes up. Very appealing to the OCD in Colin's brain. Maybe almost bought a game that was on that list just to get the points. So,
oh no,
but didn't end up doing it. But it's a game I really want, so I think I'm going to do it. It's the TMNT Shredders, or TMNT collection rather. I have Shredder's Revenge, the Konami collection. I still have not bought it, so might as well do that. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't expect any of you guys to say anything about PlayStation Stars. It's not something a lot of people are writing in about. But in a world of complaints, and boy, do we complain.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really anything bad? No, it's really not. It's actually pretty cool. So I want to be a believer. And I also want to say about Activision and Microsoft and all this, we're all tired of talking about it. However, over on Defining Duke, where it is much more germane to the subject matter, they sat down on Defining Duke Ultimate on Patreon with our legal analyst, Rick Hogue of Hogue Law, to talk all about it, all the updates and all of that. So go talk about it there. I think we can all agree that we're tired of this topic, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm so glad that Sony's not buying Activision, because we would have to talk about it. And then who knows where I would be in life right now.
Oh, God, it would be so sad.
All right. Only a couple of days after we went live with the last episode came news that G4, the revived shambling corpse of G4, is done. Deadline.com reported on Sunday night that Comcast, the owner of the G4 brand, had pulled the plug. Everyone's laid off. It's all over. I didn't see any specific numbers, but we figured that the company was about 200 strong. 30 people were laid off. So the layoffs could be 150 to 170. It's a lot of people. So our very best goes to those that are laid off. However, this was predictable. I think the sad thing we're going to talk about was how the news broke. I don't think anyone would have necessarily been surprised if you worked there, considering you must have seen the metrics better than anybody. But I was wondering if we had any passing or closing thoughts. I definitely do, and I want to get into one thing in particular. But Chris, let's go to you first. Do you have any closing thoughts on G4 now that it's a memory?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. You know, I think anybody could have told you this even before they even started up again, that this was just kind of a very, very unnecessary venture. G4 is now, in the modern era, just kind of competing with hundreds, if not thousands, of other individual G4s. Like, you could argue that Last Stand is its own G4. You could argue that, IGN is its own G4. You could argue that every video games content creator is their own G4. Maddie is his own G4.
Right.
There is no real necessity for them anymore. And I liked G4 back in the day. Like, I remember, like, when we were talking about this a long time ago, or even before this whole revival was even news to talk about at all. G4 would come up in questions and in write-ins every now and again, and I have fond memories of it, but it's just a different world now. And whoever greenlit this, especially with 200 people working on it, I just don't understand how you get to that point how you get to the point where you have enough influence to even make that decision in the first place, if that is your judgment. Like, I could see G4 as a brand maybe kind of coming back in some small way with maybe a handful, maybe 15, 20 people max, like maybe just kind of like an indie from the ground up kind of revival. I think that could have been interesting. Maybe if they did some new stuff with it, but trying to turn it back into the behemoth that it was is just a really, really fucking terrible idea. And even I had the business sense to know that. So,
yeah, it's It just seemed obvious. And the more you learned about the operation, the more you were confused how it ever got past things. And that's why I just want to reiterate one more time, since we're not going to talk about this after today, Dustin, that there are people in positions of power across corporate America and elsewhere that don't know fucking anything.
Oh, yeah.
That somehow got into these positions. And someone said to them, yeah, give us 20, 30, 40 million dollars and we'll get G4 off the ground. They're like, oh, yeah, all right. Here you go. Might as well have taken that money and put it in a garbage can in the middle of the street and burned it. And you probably would have got more people to watch it than G4. And it's just, to your point, Chris, and Dustin, I will kick it over to you. It's like, I immediately came up in my mind, like, G4 2. It's like, why didn't you even try to like just differentiate it in any way? You know, like even just call it something different, not tether it to any of the old names. And then if you think about it that way, it's like, well, why even bother bringing this brand back at all? Start something new. So anyway, what do you think, Dustin?
So I think that the main takeaway from this whole situation is just that, obviously, I think exactly what Chris said was true about how like the writing was on the walls from the beginning. But I think that there's a clear indicator of how you interact and treat your audience has a major impact on things. And you can see that, I mean, we've all talked about it a million times, the Frosk G4 rant. That was kind of the turning point. You know, she said, leave. You know, she said, I think the exact quote was, if you don't like it, don't watch it, or something very close to that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people took that message and said, yep, we're out. And so I just wonder if other big companies are looking at this. I mean, I imagine that this is going to be like other companies will look at this and be like, okay, this is something not to do because clearly it had a major impact.
Yeah, it's funny. Gene and I were talking about that on Sacred Symbols Plus, and he was saying that he appreciated that I seem to have a stance that identified that while the wokeness in quotes and that rant had a piece of it, that there's actually just an underlying corporate reality that it was never going to happen regardless. Like, I think it facilitated a precipitous fall, but I think this decline would have happened. I just don't understand what people don't understand, that the old days are gone. There are magazines still. There are. And the prominent magazines in the gaming space outside of Game Informer are fan-run, Nintendo Force style publications that are ground up, that are run out of people's garages. We just talked about merch earlier, in our new merch earlier in the show, laststandmedia.store. We ship all of that out of my house, right? Like I didn't go get a warehouse and be like, we're selling merch and like hire 7 people to do the merch operation. It's like, dude, we're a fucking small company, so let's do it small. And that's, I think, a major point of confusion to me that will always ring true with this G4. It was just, this is just it's a sign, a bad sign for other companies too. And, but I want to start with a couple of things here. Dylan Manjusek wrote in and said, hello, Slitter Diddlers. With G4 officially shutting down, news broke on Sunday the 16th before employees could hear it from management themselves. Instead, found out from Twitter. Do people like Wario64 or journalists at Deadline have a moral obligation to refrain from reporting on news that will hurt people? Or is news like this obtained from a source fair game? I mean, in my personal opinion, I don't think they have an obligation to do that at all. The entity that has the obligation to respect their employees is the employer. I mean, they're the ones that leaked it.
Yeah.
So to me, I see those kinds of complaints and I'm like, no, stop. Do you want people to be journalists or don't you? Stop being so choosy. I'm not saying that this is necessarily you, Dylan, but a lot of people out there are always like clutching their pearls and just like, oh my God. And I'm like, just stop. Journalism is journalism. Let them do their work. Yeah. Be mad at the power brokers that thought that this was a good idea, and be mad at people at Comcast that leaked it. Shit, I would have reported it. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out.
Sure.
Sacred Symbols is sponsored by the Feels brand of premium CBD products, which can help you feel better and which you can learn more about right now at feels.com/symbols. CBD, which is short for cannabidiol, is a wonder substance of sorts. See, this humble little extract from the marijuana plant can work magic to help you feel better both mentally and physically, and there really is no catch. If you're seeing CBD become more and more prevalent over the years, and I'm sure you have, it could be that there's a reason why. And as a user of marijuana products for my entire adult life, I can speak firsthand to the premium level quality of Feels' CBD tincture, which I first used during the most stressed days of my life when I still lived in California. See, Feels was one of the first sponsors of Sacred Symbols, and they found me at the perfect time. Their product proved their worth in both helping me shake my daily stress and anxiety and assisting me in finding the precious Z's necessary to recalibrate my mind for a new day. And frankly, I'm really grateful for that. And it can do the same exact thing for you too. It can also help lessen the burden of physical aches and pains you may have picked up during a hard day's work or a bad day at your men's league. And if you're intimidated by CBD, while it's easy for me to say there's no reason to be, you can simply see for yourself by speaking to Feels' helpline of real live people that will help guide you towards the products and dosages that make the most sense for you. There's no hangover, no addiction, nothing to worry about, and everything to gain. My friends, it's time for you to take control of your self-care regimen and bring it to the next level. Start feeling better with Feels. Become a member today by going to feels.com/symbols. That's feals.com/SYMBOLS. And you'll get 40% off your first 3 months of CBD with free shipping. That's feels.com/symbols to become a member and get 40% automatically taken off your first 3 months with free shipping. Again, for high-quality CBD that can help you feel better right now, head to feels.com/symbols. One thing I did want to say, though, guys, and I am curious if you have any thoughts on this, I got to talk about Adam Sessler. I'm sorry, I got to do it. Now, I know that he comes up on the show sometimes, and I am very clear that I do not like this person. And Jose Mendoza wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, G4 TV is no more, but to no one's surprise, I was scrolling through Twitter and noticed that Adam Sessler tweeted out something about G4's closure, and I retweeted that they should have seen this coming. Now I've officially joined the block club, like I'm sure many others have. Cheers to joining the Adam Schittler block list." That's not very nice, Jose, but thank you for writing it. I wanted to bring this in up because, and a lot of people wrote in about this, so I do want to acknowledge it. A lot of people wrote in about Adam and all of this. The way Adam Sessler talks and treats other people is so far beyond the bounds of reason and acceptability that you almost have to wonder what this guy has on other people. How can you watch someone not only melt down? That's one thing. Meltdowns happen all the time. Ben Kuchera from Polygon recently had a meltdown on Twitter. I reached out to him to see if he wanted to be on the show. He didn't answer. But Adam's meltdowns contain some really crazy shit. And indeed, one of them was so crazy that I could not believe it was real, and it is still up. Someone tweeted at him something about coping with G4's closure or whatever. And he quote tweeted this person and said, "I mean, I could consider funding a House candidate in your district," so a House of Representatives candidate, "that cuts off all federal funding so you have to whore your daughters off to make ends meet while I drive by laughing." Are you fucking kidding?
That's actually insane.
You know,
that's real?
That's real. That is 100% real. I went and looked. It is real.
Wild. It's a creative
Again,
insult,
Adam Sessler
sure.
tweeted out, "I could consider funding a House candidate in your district," to just some random person on Twitter, "that cuts off all federal funding so you have to whore your daughters off to make ends meet." Imagine if I said that to someone.
Oh, yeah, no. That'd be a whole different story.
I've never said anything like that to anyone privately in my life. Nonetheless, publicly, this man is a fucking cancer on normalcy in the games industry and how no one sees it, just how broken this person is. And no one calls him out. No one in positions of power have anything to say to Adam Sessler as he melts down. You know, calls people fucking Nazis, makes fun of people for being, he was making fun of someone for saying, you know, go fuck your siblings or whatever, something like that, from someone in Mississippi. People from the Appalachian Mountains suck. More like in Dustin's neck of the woods, perhaps. I just feel like that's insanity. And it's got to be called out. I don't give a fuck if it seems like it's germane to our show or should be in the show or not. We talk about people that, like, quote unquote bad people and people that are toxic and all this. What? Here you go.
Yeah.
Is the games industry going to do anything about that? That tweet is still up as of last night anyway. And I'm sure it's fucking saved somewhere. I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. That's insanity. And so I needed to say that. We talk about all the bad people in the industry and this person's toxic and this person's got bad politics. Well, Adam Sessler is talking about whoring people's daughters off on Twitter, just straight up earnestly.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what the hell's going on with that guy. I don't know what's been going on with that guy for a long time. Like, I don't know why I was blocked. I was blocked. He blocked me years ago, like probably like half a decade ago now. And I don't know exactly why, because I don't remember saying any. Maybe I said something. I mean, knowing me, I probably did say something. But dude seems really just off, like out of his gourd every time. I actually keep forgetting that he's real because he's blocked me, so I never see his tweet. You know, sometimes you hear about people and you like maybe like see them in passing, or like maybe you see a quote tweet or like a screenshot of a tweet or something, and you're like, oh yeah, there it is. Adam Sessler never comes up, so the fact that, well, because you know he's blocked so many people, but it's always so staggering because part of me is like, I appreciate like the cleverness of that, or not the cleverness, but like I appreciate a good insult. Like I love good insults. You know what I mean? But the fact that it's coming from somebody who is kind of like this weird moral arbiter, and that people kind of protect. Because if I would say something like that, like jokingly, like I would be like really, I'll have like a toxic response to somebody on Twitter for no reason, but I would not be forgiven for it, you know? Especially, or I wouldn't be like, oh, well, that's just him. You know, it would be like, oh, you're blocked. You're on this blockchain. You're on that blockchain. You can't go here. You can't go to PAX. You know, like it'd be a whole. There's a whole lot of.
That was low key one of the best things that ever happened to us, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it was hilarious also, but I don't know. It's the double standard of it that's frustrating, more than anything else. Because if you want to be toxic on Twitter, go ahead. 2009 Twitter, guys. Oh my god. Some of the most amazing shit I've ever seen on the internet. It comes out of early Twitter.
But I understand what you're saying, but a man who talks about how, you know, it goes on and on about how he's a feminist.
No, that's what I mean.
It's like,
that's what I'm talking about. It's a complete hypocrisy. And the fact that nobody else calls him out on it is bullshit.
That's why I'm like, what do you have on people? It's like what's going on in the NFL right now, where the owner of the Commanders is telling people, apparently, according to ESPN behind the scenes, that he could ruin everyone if they try to remove him as the owner of the team. It's like this. It's like tacit blackmail. It's like, what? How could you think you can act like this? And he acts like he has fuck you money. No, he doesn't. He can say whatever he wants. No, he doesn't. So I'm a little confused about what his whole stance is, or why he thinks he can talk like that to people. I never have talked like that about anyone ever. That is the toxicity in the games industry. That's the point. Everyone points fingers and calls everyone Nazis and everyone this and that. And we have someone over here like this, right in front of you, plain as day. Open the first page. There it is. Time to wake up about who's who in the games industry, or lack thereof, because Adam Sessler is no longer in the games industry. And finally, I wanted to bring up Vonerin, who wrote in. A lot of you wrote in about this as well, so I wanted to acknowledge this as well. I don't want to ignore you guys. Hey, CDC, while not primarily a game studio, Rooster Teeth has made games, yet they trended over the weekend again about its recent batch of layoffs. October was accurately predicted by Colin to have layoffs. However, the trajectory of Rooster Teeth, which I loved back in the day, has become a cautionary tale for independent creators. Colin, you have built Last Stand with a small team and maintain its overhead pretty efficiently from the outside. Coincidentally, Kind of Funny is celebrating the expansion of its production. Furthermore, the recent G4 Sacred Symbols Plus episode dived into the collapse of a company expanding beyond its scope and explained the importance of respecting fans, to the point here, versus the adversarial nature towards viewership. Can you elaborate why the small, nimble approach seems the best, and how a potential $1 million buyout for Last Stand would be carefully considered with the history of Rooster Teeth taken into account? Last Stand's not for sale. Like, if someone came in and offered us an insane amount of money, maybe I would sell it, but I believe that without us, the company has no value. People know that. This goes into what Sony was doing with Bungie, where they used all that money to retain people. Because it's like, yeah, you can own Bungie, I guess, but what about the people? You need to lock the people down. So you don't have anything to worry about there. When I was at Kind of Funny, Rooster Teeth offered us something like $1.5 million as a loan, not to buy any part of it, just as a loan to scale. So these guys' mentality is always grow, bigger. But I think it's going to be a huge mistake for a lot of these people that have overhead. Kind of Funny's new space. I checked out some of their stream. It looks awesome. Like, it looks super dope. It's just well beyond this pale of what I think is necessary and needed in our space. I just don't understand that at all. You need a good microphone for good audio, some sort of video solution, and a brain. That's it.
Yeah.
So I just don't see it that way. Chris, how do you feel about what's going on with some of these bigger companies, and I'm curious where your head is in the production space as far as, you know, like you use your own space as well. Like, do you crave growth and like room to breathe, or do you like doing it kind of guerrilla like we do it?
I mean, it depends on what avenue we're talking about. I don't think, like, when I think about the Snark Tank specifically, or like in the podcast space, I don't really see the necessity for like getting an office, you know, or building a set or something. I don't think that's super necessary. I had when we all lived in the same exact kind of area, I did have a section of my living room that was entirely dedicated. Like we put sound foam up, we had like a table, we had, you know, mics drilled into the table and all that stuff. We had like a set, but it wasn't like at a place. And I think there's some cool things to having it, no doubt. Like it's really cool to have a space that you can really do anything with. But at the same time, for podcasts and for video game stuff, for like news stuff, it's not really all that necessary. Where I do wish I had a little bit more flexibility is in video making stuff. That's why I got my own space. That's why this is purely an office for filming. And, you know, with a fucking stupid giant green screen in here, because it's a room that I can entirely use for whatever I want. But in this space, it's totally unnecessary to have a warehouse. You know, it's not demanded of the content.
No, it doesn't seem like the numbers are there, the support's there for really any of the games media outlets, ranging from the guys at MinMax and Easy Allies and every like Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
No Clip, like whatever. It's like none of us are big enough for that. Not even close. So that's like where that's what's confusing to me, but you know, to each his own.
There's also just good advice generally that I heard a long time ago. I can't remember who said it. I'm pretty sure it was like somebody in my family. It was like, you should live well below your means.
Oh, totally.
You know, it's not necessary to have the fucking a huge ass warehouse just to make video game content. It's not necessary. And people don't really care. Like, it's cool to see, and you might be like a little bit envious of it. It's like, ooh, man, it would be nice. In a perfect world where that didn't cost an insane amount of money, sure, absolutely. If I had a free warehouse, I'd probably use it to the best of my ability. But ain't no way I'm going to pay for that.
Right, exactly. Like that's the thing when I was thinking about with Kind of Funny, which I obviously co-founded, and I was thinking about that. I was like, it actually would have been a pretty awesome move if they owned the space, but they don't. So. Right. It just seems to me like an expense, because otherwise that might have been an interesting investment. Yeah, I mean, real estate is just a really great investment, even in cities that seem to be kind of generally crumbling. Like there's just huge vacancy rates in these cities. I still think real estate could be a safe thing. But Dustin, I'm curious, as our executive producer, do you see something like that and wish that we had that? Because I will tell you, I mean, I was at our first office at Kind of Funny, and it did make things easier and maybe the product better. But it certainly shook me out of my comfort zone to the extent where you can imagine, like, okay, the show is at 100% capacity when we're recording across from each other, but I got to get in an Uber and come here, but I got to get up earlier to do it, but I got to do that, you know, like, and then so then it degrades the quality where it's like, yeah, we're in the best possible situation, but you're not getting the best possible Colin. And I think right now you're getting the best possible Colin over a webcam and a really expensive microphone. And that's pretty good. I mean, all things considered. So I would take that balance. Do you agree?
I think that it depends. I think that there are some groups and some types of content that is definitely 100% going to benefit from being in person for sure. But as far as production values, I was thinking about this because I think it comes down to that different types of people are interested in different, I mean, it sounds stupid, but different types of content or different production levels of content. Some people like the high production value with multi-camera and, you know, video walls or whatever. And it looks like it was made by, I don't know, ESPN or something like that. Some people are into that. It gives it a level of professionalism of something that you would see on cable or from a bigger company. And that's cool. But that's not what we do. And I think that what we do appeals to a different type of audience that is looking for something. I don't want this to come off as a backhanded insult, but something more authentic, something more like, we are three dudes sitting down and talking in front of an expensive webcam or a webcam and expensive microphones. And that's about like we research for the show. We get together, we do this, but there's no major team behind us. The team that produces the content is Ben and I, as far as post-production. The pre-production is all Colin. It's just kind of us doing our thing. And I think people are looking for that also. So I don't know. In some ways, I think that we can serve different markets, but I think that there also is a level of unnecessary as well.
Yeah, I look at it ultimately and say, I think I said this on Discord to the audience when they were asking about this stuff, where I was like, I'd have a hard time justifying that level of expenditure when the Jessica Jones meme where the guy's like staring at her really close. I love that meme. You know, like he's like right on top of her and he's staring at her. Like that's how I would feel my employees were looking at me if they found, you know, if I had all this money to spend and they weren't getting it. I would rather, if I were at an operation like that, I'd be like, can I just get a $25,000 raise and we can all just work from home? You know, that's kind of like my mentality. And maybe that's not a mentality that's shared by everyone, but I keep telling everyone in our company and encourage everyone, buy property, set yourself up. Let's get going. Let's make ourselves as solidified as possible, because then I think we make the best possible content when we are secure in our lives. And do I think that if we all lived in the same place and got together in a studio every day, would we make great content? Absolutely. But that comes at a substantial number of costs. Everyone has to be in the same place. We all have to gather in a place. We have to travel there. We have to pay for that. People have to sacrifice. They don't want to be in these places anymore. It's like slowly the quality diminishes, where I'm like, I would just rather everyone just be where they want to be. Because that's like the fundamental, you doing what you want, where you want, I think has got to be the fundamental, like the kernel of it.
Right. And right? you also kind of enforce, or not enforce, but I guess you kind of put, whether you're aware of it or not, you kind of put an expiration date on the quality of that content. Because if we did have like a big studio space and we all lived in the same place, like it was super cool doing the show with you specifically in person. And I do think there is something in person that is lost over webcam, whether it be timing or like, even the slightest bit of latency can throw timing off. Even with these low latency video streaming solutions that we get, you know, every now and again, you know, there'll be like an interruption or something that wouldn't happen in person because we could, you know, it is easier in person. But that Uber to Santa Monica was crazy.
Right. I totally remember that. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, I felt so bad for you at that time.
Well, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was more like over time, like that travel and that setup over a long period of time, like maybe like 3 years. At a certain point, it's just like, this is a lot now. You know, this is a lot to do. Or like people want to move, or like maybe something happens where, you know, somebody meets somebody and then, oh, I got to move in with this person like 2 states away, and then the quality of that content has to eventually get to this point where we're at. You know what I mean? Where we have to find internet solutions to it. And then it's going to be perceived as a dip in quality because it's going to be like, oh man, they're not in person anymore. So it's different. Whereas if you start here, there's nothing that's going to really like we could keep this going for a really, really, really long time. Like we could do this show conceivably for like years. And none of our what I'm saying is like none of our individual life situations will actually affect the outward facing quality of that content.
Exactly. Yeah, you totally get it. I mean, that's what, because I would never disagree, because people are like, well, wouldn't the content be best in person? It's like, yes, Chris and I fucking laugh like crazy when we're in person. I mean, it's like, there is a different quality to it. But I also will remind people that when I moved out east, we did the show remotely for a month without telling anyone. And none of you noticed. I know there's some revisionist history, but no one emailed me or DM'd me and said like, I can tell that something's different with the show. It's like, no, I didn't tell you on purpose, so that when I told you that I left or was leaving, you wouldn't be like, oh man, like, yeah, everything's all fucked up now and I can tell. And so, but it's just, it feels like there's two things. Number one, I used to joke around with this about this with Greg, is like, this shit's too high quality for me. Like, I can't take myself seriously in these situations with like the beautiful red cameras on me and $10,000 overhead camera, like looking at, it's like, this is insane. Like, this is not me at all. And I think that that's one important thing. But the other thing is that I just don't want to expend this much personal power over people. I know that I know in my heart that even if it wasn't with the crew I have now, which is the crew I want, I could be like, Last Stand Media is a Central Virginia production and everyone has to come here if they want to work for this company. And I know I could do that. But that's just the beginning of an erosion of quality of life for people. Virginia's awesome. I'm just saying you need to be where you want to be. So if like Dustin wanted to decide to want to move to Virginia one day, that would be awesome. But that's not necessary. And so I just want people to keep that calculus in mind. I think, unfortunately, in the so-called white collar work, there has been a revelation, I think, since COVID began of quality of life, just the focus on quality of life. And unfortunately, there's a lot of blue collar work that simply can't be done from afar. But I think a lot of people in the more white collar, so-called white collar forms of work have been like, I have been wasting my time commuting. I have been wasting my time in meetings. I have been wasting my time with middle management. It's like, yeah, man, totally. You have been. So I just want to remain true to that. Otherwise, Chris couldn't be in LA and Dustin couldn't be in, Butler and so on and so forth. Or if they wanted to be, we couldn't work together. Or I would have had to stay in California, and God almighty. That place broke me like Guile with the backbreaker over the knee. Couldn't be there anymore. All right. So, so I guess the end result of this is that it's sad that everyone got laid off of G4, but it was a stupid decision to bring it back. Adam Sessler is not a good person. I wish someone in positions of power would call them out with even a fraction of the gusto they called me out for saying my ex-girlfriend was allowed. Remember that? I do. And then finally, I think with Rooster Teeth, I don't really know enough about that situation, but it seems to be pretty serious. Like there seems to be some serious accusations and workplace issues. They had layoffs recently. And then the stuff with Kind of Funny, I don't know. I will always have a connection to them. I co-founded that company, so I want them to succeed. I think their success is, first of all, I think their success on Patreon is good for us. I think everyone doing well on Patreon is good for each other, but definitely emblematic of the differences between us. And I know people like to bring it up. It's like, man, I wish you guys would get back together one day and do shit. It's like 5+ years later, can't you see the difference? Whether you like one or the other is totally fine, but can't you see the difference in vision? If we stayed in that spare bedroom, I probably would have never left. But, so now I have my own spare bedroom, I guess, with shelves that I'll never do anything with, apparently. All right. So moving on to better news, or more interesting news, I guess. There's this tweet that's going around from October 17th from a gaming insider named Millie A. Now, I don't know much about this person, but I will say that I've talked to this person in DM and email, and they clearly know things, like clearly are obvious to me that they are connected in some way. So I see people dismiss this person purports to be, and you never know if you're getting like catfished online. She's like a woman in a very male field. So it's like, am I being catfished? Is this really a man? It doesn't really matter. Her name is Millie, though. Millie A. I think Millie Amand is her name on Twitter. Yeah. And she's been very nice to me in email, and we've talked about this, that, and the other thing. So I just wanted to say that I feel like she is obviously well connected in my conversations with her. And I say that because she tweeted out something saying the ongoing CMA investigation. So this has to do with what's going on in Europe with the Activision and Microsoft deal. She says, has indeed delayed any showcase plans for Sony. Exclusive titles and first-party IP were locked in. Sony believes a showcase will add weight to Microsoft arguments. Silent Hill and Kojima, Who Am I reveal were part of the show. The initial announcement of the showcase was scheduled for the 11th of October, with the showcase taking place the 20th of October. Sony holding firm for now. A lot of people, including Push Square, which I like, a lot of people were like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, what's so ridiculous about that? That seems perfectly logical to me. Like remember, people didn't have this information at the time, but the CMA has since asked the public for their input. Like anyone now can write in and say whatever you think about the Activision deal.
Use Crying Jim if you do.
And but what I'm saying is that like Crying Jim made the decision, probably, if that's true, and if what Millie is reporting here is accurate, it makes sense to me. I was confused why people were so dismissive and even mean-spirited about this, because I've read what she wrote and I was like, that I believe that. Like they want to be as low key as possible. They just made Konami announce and we're going to talk about it. Konami announced a PS5 console exclusive Silent Hill 2 remake for 1 year. By the way, it's not a full console exclusive. Who knows if that deal will change? They did it on their own little shitty event. Sony would obviously want to announce that themselves. So I totally believe this. I'm curious what you think.
Colin, in addition, this morning, just randomly on a Thursday morning, we get a new Final Fantasy XVI trailer. I wonder what that was for.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I just felt like Millie was being, again, I don't know specifically who this person is. But I have talked to this person and they are connected.
Yeah.
They've demonstrated that to me 100% as far as I'm concerned. And so I just felt like it was a little weird. Like, why are people attacking the messenger? That to me seems totally like she's claiming that the day we're recording this is when the showcase would have taken place. And it's like, that seems about right to me. I mean, and if you're having this problem where you're trying to make a claim that your arch rival is consolidating to such a way that it disadvantages you through exclusivity, then you can't have a showcase being like exclusive, which is what it's going to be. And even though we all understand that it's not the same, it's just bad optics. Chris, you have any thoughts?
No, it makes perfect sense to me. That would be really, it already is, because there was, when this first started happening, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it might have been Final Fantasy actually, but there were a bunch of trailers that came out of Sony like immediately after they started kind of weighing in on the Microsoft deal, where there were like, hey, timed exclusive for a year, or like exclusive, and it's like, oh man, that doesn't look good. And so it does make sense totally that they would want to not do that. It also makes sense that now's about the right time for a lot of these announcements, now that God of War is kind of done and ready. And I remember a lot of people being like, oh, they're not going to want to undercut God of War with a bunch of new announcements. And I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, everybody who's excited for God of War is going to be excited for God of War regardless. They're in on it. They're going to play it. It's just letting people know what's next, which is, I think, very important, especially for people who don't care about God of War, who don't have anything to look forward to. So, yeah, no, this checks out to me anyway. It doesn't seem, were people really like weirdly suspicious of this? Like in a way that was,
yeah, I mean, like, I'm Push Square, a site I like. Sammy Barker, a person I like, wrote, ridiculous rumor reckons PS Showcase delayed due to investigation into Xbox's Activision acquisition. And then the subtitle is, but it's bull. And he writes, and he just writes very skeptically. And I understand. I people should be skeptical of all sources. And I can't speak to who this Millie person is. Like,
right.
I don't know. But it just seems like, why you're positioning the story like this when, in my opinion, it makes sense. Because he writes in part, Amand reckons that Silent Hill and the next project from Hideo Kojima would have been part of the showcase. Well, in the former's case, Konami is going to announce it this week anyway. Right. Like, that's exactly right. And in this case of the latter, assuming Kojima Productions really is on the cusp of unveiling Death Stranding 2, it appears to have its own marketing strategy in place. Right. Again, right. And the only thing that they bring up is that Rise of the Ronin was announced, which is true. But I don't think that really matters. Like, that's a one-off game. I just don't see... he says, please, we implore you to not believe everything you read on Twitter. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't see how that's, even if that's just a theory and she's not presenting it like it is, but even if it was a theory, I think it's a sound theory. Again, not because of the reality, but because of the perception. That's it. We're dealing, obviously, with people. Have you ever heard a congressman talk about video games before? Imagine what this group, this regulatory European group knows about video games. I mean, can you even imagine? They have no fucking idea. You just don't want to give them stories.
Yeah.
To ingest. I don't know, man. That doesn't sound crazy to me at all. And I also would argue that they don't really need to do anything. God of War is going to be huge, and that will get them right on through the year. Yeah. And one way or the other, this thing will be wrapped up soon. And then I know I promised that we wouldn't talk about it per se, but I just wanted to say from an insider's angle, that made a lot of sense to me. Yeah. I also wanted to note that on PlayStation Blog, there is a new God of War Ragnarok behind the scenes series. It started already with episode 1. This is similar to the one they did for the original game in 2018. I'm not watching it. Have you guys checked this thing out? Are you interested in it? Nope. I don't want to see any more footage.
Yeah, same.
Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Upside. Inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back. I know for me, our grocery bill has been skyrocketing. So with that, we've had to cut back in some different ways. Eating out less, getting less coffee when we're on the go, sometimes waiting till something's on sale or on clearance. Whether it's driving less, dining out less, or buying less from the grocery store, we can all agree there's nothing fun about less. So that's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out, which is pretty much everyone. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. For me, there's some things that I absolutely would not want to cut back if I had to, such as video games or good coffee beans, or going to a concert for one of my favorite bands. And that's what I love about Upside. I don't have to cut because I earned cash back on essentials. To get started, download the free Upside app. Use our promo code SACRED and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit or debit card, and get paid. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. And with it being as simple as downloading and using an app, why wouldn't you want to get in on that? Download the free Upside app and use promo code SACRED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code SACRED.
I'm Felicia Day, and I'm the host of the official The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power podcast. In every episode, I'm going backstage for an all-access look at what it took to bring Middle-earth to life. I'll even have the first full breakdown of the incredible season finale with the series showrunners, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. I will be sharing juicy behind-the-scenes stories and processing all the holy crap moments with the members of the cast and crew.
Numenor has got to be the most amazing thing ever, and we wanted it to just be the greatest kingdom of men that ever existed.
The elves are arrogant and vain. They're not beyond being corrupted.
Can I just say, watching Owen Arthur eat in his full regalia is the most hilarious thing.
So if you want to deep dive into every episode, watch The Rings of Power on Prime Video and listen to all 8 episodes of the official The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power podcast for free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app now.
I wanted to bring up what's going on with Bayonetta 3. This has nothing to do with PlayStation. It's a Switch exclusive funded by Nintendo. So it's really quite opposite of what we do here. However, a lot of people wrote in about it, and I felt like it would have been weird to ignore it. So Tyler Yateman wrote in and said, "Good evening, gentlemen. What do you think about the ridiculous drama surrounding Bayonetta 3? Why do so many people rush to pick a side to champion on Twitter without all the information? First, support for Helena, culminating Camilla leaving Twitter, and then not even one day later, everyone is walking back support for Helena and saying we should apologize to Camilla. Calling for a boycott of Bayonetta 3 over contract negotiations seems terminally online. Why are people elevating their gaming choice to grand moral statements? I've seen people, Twitter users, say, since it's just a video game, the choice to not buy should be obvious, but it's actually the opposite. None of this drama should have any influence on us. Thanks for all the content. I am never satiated." Thank you for writing in. So, to catch people up, Helena Taylor is a classically trained British actress who was the voice of Bayonetta and Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2. And Bayonetta 1 was on PS3. Bayonetta 2, of course, is a Switch game. Bayonetta 3 is a Switch game. Or was it a Wii U game? Came to Switch, right?
Bayonetta 2 was Wii U.
Right. And then it came to Switch. And now this is a Switch game. And so she tweeted out that she was offered, in this series of videos, she was offered $4,000 for her performance. This was the claim.
Right.
And that to me seemed ridiculous. In fact, when I was talking to Gene, and this was before all the news stuff broke, I was saying to him, I was like, when I was watching that and I saw the story circulating that morning, my heart dropped because I was like, what is she going to say? Something insane like they offered her something insulting like $25,000, right? And then I saw $4,000 and I was like, that's insanity. But then we have since learned, according to Bloomberg, that it might have been that at least 5 different sessions for $3,000 to $4,000 each over a few months of work. So maybe something more like $15,000 or $20,000. Here's what I'll say about this from my perspective. And Dustin, I want to hear what you have to say about this first. Is I think that we have a problem in the industry of underappreciating art, like what it takes to do something at the highest possible level. And I really think that VO is a lot like writing. Everyone thinks they can do it. But you want to know how I know and not everyone can write? Because I go through all of your fucking comments every week and not all of you can write, right? It's not that you don't know how to read or write per se. It's that like you're not a writer, clearly. And that's okay because you're good at other things, right? And I've done VO. I've done lots and lots and lots and lots of VO in my life. And I consider myself pretty good at it, but it's hard. It's really hard. And playing a character, which I've only done a couple of times, is even harder. And I just think people think that because something is doable in your mind, like, oh, I could go in the booth and talk in a microphone. I could do that. I could sit at a computer and write a game story. I could write a story on IGN. And it's different than saying like, oh, I have to make a car. I need all this fabrication and this factories and all these things. It's something, in other words, you can just do, but you can't, right? And that's okay. Again, that's okay. But I think that I feel bad for the actresses and the actors in the world who, even at $20,000, that's an insult. For Bayonetta, as she said, a $400 million franchise for Sega and Nintendo now and Platinum. The thing is, though, and this is the problem, Dustin, is that she lied. I mean, if this is true, then she lied. And I don't understand why she didn't represent the full story, because the full story is still damning. Gene Park made a really good point, and I'm glad he made it on Sacred Symbols Plus. People can go listen. He said, for those that think $4,000 is a lot of money, it's time to grow up. And that's like literally what he said. Because some people were like, that's so much money. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's not so much money at all. And when your life is like acting out these roles and living them and bringing them to the screen, I don't know. I just feel like it deserves more respect than that. So I think she did herself a disservice.
Yeah.
But I understand the fight. Someone like her, I mean, for Bayonetta, like $100,000 would be an appropriate fee, something like that, in my opinion. What do you think?
The most interesting thing about this story to me is just how many layers of it there are and how there's so much stupidity at every angle. I thought it was extremely tacky. In her video, she mentions the new voice actress, Jennifer Hale. And it was weird because she was somewhat respectful and also kind of disrespectful, saying that she doesn't have any right to claim that she's Bayonetta and stuff like that.
Sign things as Bayonetta and stuff.
Right. And so there was a bunch of harassment pointed towards Jennifer Hale, who is under NDA and couldn't say anything initially and had to figure out how to make a statement. And then you have the Kamiya side, who has this thing where he blocks anyone who says anything he vaguely doesn't like. So you have him blocking anyone who criticized him. It's like, you might want to drop the bit for a minute for this one, which eventually his account, I think he maybe turned it off himself, but it eventually, like, Twitter stopped it because there's strange activity with him blocking probably hundreds of people. So you have that aspect. And now she is still claiming that Platinum, what the Jason Schreier reporting, isn't true. So this is just an extremely messy situation that I can't imagine goes without any sort of litigation, at this point. Like, surely if Platinum and Nintendo believe that if she is lying and calling for people to not buy the game and hurt their sales and it's not true, then they should sue her. But I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, there's so many sides that it's clear to me, at least, that there are lies on both sides, most likely.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Overall, a really interesting and weird situation.
What do you think, Chris?
It's a confusing situation because, Helena Taylor, right? That's her name.
Right.
She's not a novice, she's not green to the VO game. So she knows standard rates. She knows the industry. So for her to lie would be such a wild career suicide for no reason. And I think that's why a lot of people were on her side initially, because, like, if you assume she's lying, then you also assume that she's just destroying her life. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you say that you were offered $4,000 when you were clearly offered about like $20,000? That's a wild lie that would potentially get you blacklisted from pretty much every other role that could conceivably hire you at even a remotely decent rate. So I think a lot of people were on her side initially because it's like, why would you lie about that? And then for Platinum to be like, no, this is what the actual rate was, which was fairly standard for VR. Like, I know a lot of people who are voice actors, and they say, it's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Now there's an argument as to whether or not, like, she's worth more than that, and that's definitely a debate to be had. I definitely think that's a little bit low for somebody as iconic as Bayonetta. I don't know if $100,000 is appropriate. Maybe like maybe something close. at the very least. But 25 is definitely like, or 20 to 25 is pretty low ball for that. So I understand the frustration there. I guess I'm just confused as to what benefit does either side have to lie about this, and I can't find it. I don't know why Platinum would lie about offering her the like a standard rate, and I don't know why she would lie about not being offered that standard rate. That's what's so confusing about this particular scenario to me. I think before I say anything else about it, I'd want to see like how this actually shakes out, because I'm very much with you guys where I think this is probably going to end up in there's going to be some litigation on this, because it's crazy. You know, if one of them is lying, then one of them has a good right to sue the other one. You know, so it would make no sense for nothing to come out of this. It's just a very bizarre situation, because it's one of the few times where a story like this happens where I just cannot find a reason for either to lie.
One other thing that I forgot to bring up that was a really interesting facet to this story is after this happened, people dug up some tweets from Helena Taylor of what we were talking about earlier, bad politics. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, should we be defending her because she said XYZ? It's just like the ultimate clusterfuck. Like, oh, yeah,
it is.
So people you disagree with, you don't, maybe we shouldn't go to bat for them if they should get paid a fair wage. Fuck off. Like,
that's so dumb.
It's insane.
Here's the thing is that I do think there's a few interesting hanging threads apart from her too, is that Jennifer Hale is maybe one of the most famous voice actresses ever in cartoon video games.
Yeah.
She's certainly at the highest end in terms of pricing. So that was one confusing thing that didn't make much sense from the outset. And it does bring up this question of why do we immediately believe people? And I guess I think it's good to believe people at the offset, so long as it doesn't come off as abusive or unfair to the other side, which I think is what Chris is bringing up about, you know, it can be defamatory, and got to really be careful to be accurate with your information. But I will say this, and I don't want anyone to catch strays, as it were, but I really am tired of Hideki Kamiya, and I think that more people need to just, it's very similar with what I said about Adam Sessler earlier. Like, you're a toxic presence. You're an asshole. And when things like this happen to people like you, who have not shepherded an ounce of goodwill in the audience because you're horrible to people, then of course they're not going to believe you. They're looking for a way to tear you down. Of course, Helena Taylor, if she said this about someone else with like much more trust, if she said this about Hideo Kojima, do you think people would have reacted like that? I don't think so. Kamiya is like a really strange cat, and I'm not going to deny his talent. We're talking about the guy who directed Resident Evil 2. We're talking about the guy who directed Beautiful Joe and Okami and shit like that, you know? And obviously Bayonetta. But we're also talking about a guy who in the last 10 years hasn't done very much. And a guy that seems to be increasingly frustrated, and a guy who seems increasingly abusive to random people who like him. And I think he thinks it's part of his charm, but I was always put off by that. It made me never want to meet him. Whenever I was, it's not like he would ever know who I was, but in the chances I could have met him at different events, I was scared. It's like, what is this guy going to bite my head off or fucking make fun of me or something? It's like, Jesus Christ. So I just feel like in some sense, you know, he was the director of Scalebound. That got canceled. The new project they're working on, he's the director of. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Obviously, Bayonetta 3 is his, you know, that's his series. But I just wanted to point that out. You don't have to be like that to people. And I think that if he wasn't like that, that's a whole nother tangent with this story, where if he wasn't like that, then this would have gone a different way from the outset. I think people were like, oh, Kamiya, the guy who fucking goes nuts on anyone for any reason. That guy? Oh yeah, we love him. We want to protect him at all costs.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think so. So it's an interesting story. I know it has nothing to do with our field, but I think that was probably what people wrote in about more than anything. So it would have been disingenuous to ignore it. We can move a little quicker now. I wanted to point out Play Overwatch, the Twitter account. So Overwatch's official Twitter account noted that in its first 10 days, Overwatch 2 had 25 million players. And it's worth noting that is basically more people than have ever bought a first-party PlayStation game, like one individual game. I just thought that was incredible. Are you, either of you, you guys aren't messing around with Overwatch? I guess you have fallen off, Chris? I know you were trying to get in.
Yeah, I played like I managed to get into like a round or two. It's what it was before. Like it's a very.
I heard it's worse.
Yeah, I think it's worse in some ways too. It literally is a 1.1, maybe 1.2 version of the game. It's got a different way to unlock characters. It's got like more of a Fortnite style battle pass, but beyond that, it's very much just Overwatch again. The maps have like different lighting to make you think they're new play spaces, which I think is so funny. Like they're just like, look what we did. We made this nighttime map daytime. And it's like, okay, all right. like that we knew that a while ago, but it's another thing because that was one of the first things that they were touting. And to play it is another experience where it's like, oh, it's like a really funny way to refresh content. I don't think it's a bad idea, by the way. I just think it's like it's very funny to market as a sequel, and you could tell that the decision was made where it's like, oh, we got to make these maps feel different, but we can't make new ones. So I don't know. It's fine. It's more Overwatch. I think more people were just curious about it more than anything. I don't imagine this being a particularly strong, comeback. I don't expect the success to stay. I mean, Overwatch is it's a fun game and people enjoy it, and I'm sure it'll retain a decent amount of players, but it's free to play. So of course, everybody tried it. That's how free to play works.
That's true. Yeah.
So I don't really. I actually think 25 is a little bit low. In what you compared to, I mean, you think about like because Halo Infinite was like I think 20 million, right? And that was like a comparatively fledgling franchise. So like 5 million for Overwatch, like 5 more million for Overwatch in opening week or whatever. That's not bad. It's nothing to scoff at, but it's not any indication of success necessarily because what matters is how many of those people stay. And I'm curious to see these numbers in about like a month, 2 months. See where the game is at, because I have a really strong suspicion that it's not going to hold anywhere near this.
We'll see,
but we'll see. Yeah.
And I think those those connection problems and all the issues off the bat, you gotta. That
didn't help either.
They gotta be ready, man. I don't understand what's going on with this. Like, you gotta be ready.
In fairness to them, they were getting DDoSed.
Well, that's true.
So it's not necessarily entirely their fault, but that queue was hilarious. Like 35,000 people in front of you. Awesome. Love it. But yeah, it's just Overwatch again. I don't know if I have anything else. Did you try it, Dustin? Like, I assume you did because No.
Why would I try something that would only bring me pain?
Yeah.
I mean, actually, that's not true. I do that all the time. But in this case, I actually wised up and thought people can't even. This was when people were first trying to get into it. It's like, why would I even try when people are getting 30,000 people queue and stuff like that? And then when people were starting to get in, I just wasn't hearing good things at all. And I know some people are having fun, and that's great. If you're having fun with it, then ignore this, whatever. But I don't know. There's so many other stuff that I actually actively want to play right now that I don't even feel compelled.
Yeah. I played for like maybe like an hour and a half, I think. And I was just like, all right, I remember this. I don't hate it. It's just, it's not my style, really.
Okay. Let's see. Final Fantasy XVI update. New trailer out. Not going to watch it. It's the third trailer. It's called Ambition. You can check it out now on YouTube. But both Naoki Yoshida, who of course is the producer, and Hiroshi Takai, who is the director, they both released little letters. They kind of say the same thing. They put them on various social media feeds. But Naoki Yoshida says in part, "Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to announce that our newest trailer is now live. Rather than focusing on action as we did in our last reveal, this time we wanted to give the world a more in-depth look with rich cast of characters, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to see anymore. So I'm not interested in watching this." So they say he says, with regards to development, the team has turned the corner and entered the home stretch and is currently concentrating its efforts on debugging, tweaking, polishing, and optimization. And then he says, as for promotion, so they're going on a media tour soon. So we're going to hear a lot more about this game, I think, in November. And then Takai said a lot of the same stuff. He says, as the game edges closer to completion, the team has turned its full attention to debugging and final adjustments. Now that things are starting to come together, the game is sizing up to be something truly special. I believe it. Dustin, how are you feeling about Final Fantasy 16 coming to PS5? Looks like in the summer of 2023.
Fantastic. This trailer was very, very good. I think, Colin, I mean, I'm not going to tell you to watch it if you don't want to. I think that people should feel safe watching this trailer. But I think I'm in for a gameplay deep dive in the future. But after that, I am also going to go blackout on it just because Square Enix is famous for spoiling their games in trailers as they lead up to launch. But this trailer was very, very good. My most anticipated game for sure.
Chris, how you feeling? Are you excited about Final Fantasy 16?
I can't. I don't know. I can't pretend. I think it looks cool, but I also just I know myself when it comes to these games. Like I always think they look cool, and then I try them, and then I'm just like I'm overwhelmed, and then I play something else, and then it's too late to go back. It's always what happens to me with Final Fantasy. It's an overwhelming game for me for some reason. I don't know what it is. I think it's because it's so storied and there's so fucking many of them. Even though they're not connected, I feel like it's like how you felt with like Yakuza or whatever, where it's like I feel like a poser because I haven't played like the first 7 or like
yeah,
the first
I can
10,
understand that,
and it's just like I don't know.
I can understand that. Yeah, I get that. It is how I feel about Yakuza, and yeah, Final Fantasy 16. I don't know. I'm just amped up. I just want to see what it is. I feel so high on Final Fantasy after Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just thought it was great. That game was so special. It was so incredible. It was truly, truly incredible. And I love the idea of getting the Final Fantasy 14 guys and their knowledge and know-how and their skills come to bear for a single player Final Fantasy game. I think it's gonna be fucking awesome. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then Insomniac, I thought this was interesting. They quietly confirmed on Twitter to someone, and this is surprisingly candid, actually. So someone they put out this GIF of Miles Morales, which came to PC, and people were responding about Spider-Man's release date in 2023. And a guy named Jorge wrote, "I'm starting to get worried, honestly. I've been bugging Insomniac about it, but I stopped after they told me it wasn't ready. I really hope it doesn't get delayed." And then said, Insomniac Games themselves responded, "Don't. We're making good progress, and it's still slated for 2023. Showing games takes time, effort, resources, and coordination." So it looks like Spider-Man 2 still coming, but we'll have played it probably within the next year, which is kind of cool because we don't know anything about it really. We haven't seen really anything at all. So that's kind of neat. Armando Estevez wrote into us though with a good thought. He says, "Hey guys, last week, you guys struggled to think of a game that could warrant Sony aiming to produce 30 million PS5s. The game you guys forgot to mention is Spider-Man 2. The game is set to release in 2023 and will be exclusive to PS5, not cross-gen. With the sales of the first game in Miles Morales, it is not hard to believe Sony has high expectations for the game and will want as many PS5s on the market as possible. Keep up the great work and keep fucking that chicken." Thank you, Armando, for writing in. This is a good thought. Chris, what do you think? Do you think he's right that their push for PS5s has something to do with this game? And certainly others. Final Fantasy 16 is another one. In fact, it seems like maybe the games are culminating for a really great year.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought. I do think that thought probably would have crossed my mind had we known that Spider-Man 2 was officially slated for 2023, which we did not know at the time. Because it seems like that game I expected to be... I don't know if I expected it for 2023 to be real.
Well, they said that it was coming 2023 in the trailer, but
yeah, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's one of the, I don't believe release dates typically. I always like, okay, so what does that really mean? Fall 2023 means to me like February or something, or maybe they even delay it even longer. But that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I mean, Spider-Man is no slouch. I mean, Spider-Man sold how much?
Like 20 million.
Yeah, like 20 million. Something insane. That's really, really impressive. And I could see Spider-Man 2 being that hype game that gets a lot of people excited. I'm stoked about it. And I haven't even seen a shred of it. So that makes a ton of sense. Also, with God of War kind of marking the end of that release window, promotional, that artificially stretched out promotional launch window. Now we have kind of a clearer picture of what lies ahead. Especially now with the Silent Hill stuff coming out and all this other stuff, it's starting to be a more complete picture. But I think Spider-Man 2 could definitely be that game. Absolutely, like Spider-Man 2 is going to sell like crazy.
Yeah, it will, and Wolverine coming after that as well. What's interesting is you're right. Once we get past God of War, Helldivers 2 is coming. We know that the trailer. I mean, part of the trailer leaked. I don't know if people saw it. It was a few weeks ago, but it was like a piece of clearly a real part of the trailer, and that was in the NVIDIA leak, so we know that's coming from second party. That would be Arrowhead that would be making that game. But apart from Insomniac's 2 games, we actually don't know a goddamn thing. We know vaguely about Factions and a few other second party projects like Ronin and presumptions like Ghost of Tsushima 2, but it is exciting that they have a lot to say. And that's again why I believe the idea of a rumor percolating stating that they were ready to go now, and just the realities of the economic situation make it such that they just don't want to draw attention to the hypocrisy of their argument, of course, in some sense. So we'll see what happens. But you might be right, Armando. That might be one of the reasons. 30 million PS5s is a lot. Just as I think Xbox sold 21 million units total. GameCube 24 million units total. Sony's going to sell 30 million in a year. I don't know. We'll see. Guys, good news. False alarm. There was a rumor, ill-begotten, going around on social media that was then absorbed by some websites stating that Callisto Protocol was delayed and would now come out in February. And this made my heart fall. Because for some reason I was like, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Why wouldn't you also be delayed? But thank God that the rumor is false. The Callisto Protocol will be coming on December 2nd. Comes from the horse's mouth on their social media feeds. So pleased to hear that. What did you guys think of this, Dustin? When did you see this false alarm? Did you? And it seemed believable. It wasn't like manufactured out of nowhere. It seemed to be gleaned from a mistake from the Epic Game Store that indicated a February release date. However, the release date it showed was a Sunday, and that should have shown immediately that something was wrong. Nonetheless, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that everyone is ready to believe any kind of leak about delays just because they're so common. That especially with a game like this, where a newer team, a lot of promise behind it, a leak or a delay is very believable. But for them to come out, say it's not true, is good. And then something we're going to talk about in a question or in a minute or two is the fact that they have a performance mode as well. Was a nice little burn to some other games that just got released.
Indeed, and we'll get to those shortly. I wanted to bring up for you, since Dustin, since we know you love NieR Automata, GameSpot, which we don't bring up very often on this show. They just don't write anything really anymore that's newsworthy, usually just regurgitative. They sat down with people from Square Enix to talk about NieR Automata. And so NieR Automata was produced on the Square Enix side by Yosuke Saito. And he told them in this, I just wanted to get your take on this. He told them that they anticipated at Square Enix that Automata would only sell 300,000 copies, which is nothing. And obviously it exceeded that many times. And that he threatened to quit, basically, if they wouldn't go through with it. What do you think of that? This obviously seemed to be a slam dunk in hindsight, but it seemed like they really had a push.
I can understand why Square Enix would feel that way, especially with the reception of the first NieR game and how that came out. So it's one of those things where when this game came out, I don't think that a lot of people expected much from it. But the reviews were pretty good. But I think what really pushed this game into the stratosphere was just word of mouth. People played this game. They fell in love with the characters, the music, the story. And so it's cool to see someone believe in something like to that level where they are willing to put everything on the line. And clearly it paid off, because I think that now, looking back on the PS4 generation, this is a game that people will bring up as one of the best.
All right. And finally, we can get to this conversation that people want to have about what's going on with Gotham Knights running at 30 frames. So the reality is that this game, Gotham Knights, which is out now, PlayStation 5, it was supposed to come to PlayStation 4, but that iteration was canceled late in development. It runs at only 30 frames. And this has been an interesting conversation. Let's start with Josh Kiscalt, though, who calls it like it is. He says, "Hey, CDC, I'm just curious if Chris is taking full responsibility for the current hysteria over 30 frames. Before Chris, Colin talked about not caring about frame rate, but now he's refusing to play a game at 30 frames. I rarely heard anyone discussing frame rate, and now it's trending Twitter topic. Mr. Raygun, how does it feel to have complete control over the zeitgeist and future of gaming? Thanks, and keep it rocking." A lot of people are surprised by this. I won't play this game. Like, it's you actually have successfully broken me. I was watching Micah play Witcher 2 the other day, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like, this is rough. You know, like you really can tell. I don't know what I was thinking, really. I guess it's when you're bombarded with the same thing over and over again, I think you just become acclimated to it. And in the PS3 era specifically, we became acclimated at 30 frames. That's what everything was going to run at. That was it.
Yeah.
And that's the best you can hope for. And I think that once that my mind broke of that, I just saw it for what it was. And it's inexcusable to release a game on PS5 at 30 frames. I mean, that's my opinion. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I was already kind of like only kind of curious about this game, but now certainly not. Like I cannot abide by it. It's the thing about it is, and I think you're probably right with the familiarity thing, where it's like, okay, well, everything else was 30 frames per second. This is our only option. If we want to interface with this medium at all, we're going to have to deal with this kind of standard. So of course we're used to it. And there was a time too where I was totally fine with 30 frames per second. There are games, by the way, that do 30 frames per second better than others. I do think there is such a thing as I know it sounds funny, but there is such a thing as a smooth 30 frames per second. And
Uncharted
you can see,
is a great example of that.
Uncharted is a great example. There are games. It's all about the frame pacing, and Digital Foundry is way better at explaining this stuff than I am. So I'll leave it to them. They make really, really fantastic breakdowns of all this stuff, and they explain why certain 30 frames per second games feel better than others. But just as a general rule now, with modern hardware and with modern PCs and even with modern consoles, the standard is now 60 frames per second. It is kind of difficult to find a modern game now that doesn't support 60 frames per second, whether it be in some kind of performance mode or just by base default. And so when you have the exception to the rule be 30 frames per second, that's just, there's no reason at that point to subject yourself to that. Because before we would have the one-off games that were 60 frames back in the day. I think Call of Duty was actually 60 frames per second, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I remember Call of Duty feeling a lot smoother than other games. And I remember like, oh, cool. It's like a nice
and I remember
gem.
Shadowfall. I think Shadowfall launched at 60
right.
as well.
There was a point in time where 60 was a gem and you'd be like, ooh, cool. But it's still not the standard. Now it is the standard, and to have anything that is not the standard come out and be boastful about it, it's like, oh, hey, here's a new video game, new PS5 exclusive, 30 frames. No, that's not why we got these machines. If I wanted to play at 30 frames per second, I would have stayed on PS4, and I'm not. So I don't know. I don't know who decided this. You need at the bare minimum, you need a performance mode. I am fine sacrificing ray tracing or some like random, like, oh, I don't need the building that's on the horizon to be rendered at full 4K. I don't need that. I would much rather have a smooth experience. And for them not supporting this is insane to me. But I'm a frame rate snob, so that's well,
I think a lot of people have increasingly become so, Chris. I think you were not ahead of your time, because I mean, I knew people at IGN that were obsessed with this shit too. Although I knew people at IGN that were on the exact opposite spectrum. I remember Mitch Dyer getting into a lot of shit. We brought this up in the past for saying you can't even see 720, the difference between 1080 and 720, that kind of stuff.
That's crazy.
At more than like at smaller than 30 inches or whatever. I don't know what the argument was, but it got him in like some sort of trouble. And so there's always been people on both sides of this for me. I've always kind of just ignored it because I've never been much of a fidelity person. And what I've realized is The Last of Us Part 1 is a great example, and Horizon Forbidden West is a great example, where I started Horizon Forbidden West at 60 frames, and I'm like, I just want to see what it looks like, and maybe it'll look better in the the high fidelity 4K mode. But when I started playing it at 60 frames at 1080 or whatever it was, or better than 1080, 1440, whatever it was running at, I was like, this looks fucking awesome. Like, I don't understand why it would need to look any better than this. And I don't need to sacrifice the frame rate to get all the other stuff that I feel like it would just be slightly additive, as opposed to a frame rate that is substantially additive, especially in fast moving games. Like playing Horizon at 30 frames, like, ooh, what? Like how? I don't know about that. And I've just become acclimated in a different way, where I'm like, the second I saw that 30 frames thing from Arkham Knight, I'm like, nope, not for me. Sorry, not on PS5.
It's a matter of video games are an interactive medium. So what takes precedence more than anything is how it feels to interact with. And if you have something that looks like, okay, it's 30 frames per second, but it's 4K and it looks great, that's great for people who are watching me play, I guess. But no, like I want it to feel good, because that's the whole point of interacting with this game in the first place. It's the whole point of interacting with this medium, is to get the feel of it feeling as good as possible. And it just, I don't know, man, it is wild. By the way, I know you mentioned this in a little parentheses, but Plague Tale also has this limit. And as much as I am looking forward to Plague Tale, I cannot. I can't. I'm not doing it. Not until this must have a patch available at some point.
I would assume so. I mean, I was surprised. Remember, when we were talking about Asobo, we've really complimented them a lot. And obviously, these games are very well received. I'm not saying anything about that. But we were wondering, like, how did you make a game like this in under 3 years? There you go. And there are sacrifices on the other end. It's funny that you say that because I felt like a Plague Tale. I was going to ask you about that because I felt like that game is more filmic and would be acceptable at 30 frames. I was surprised by that because I don't understand how you can't get that to going at 60 frames, but I wasn't as offended on a gameplay level because it's a much more
cinematic. It's a cinematic game. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I did consider it for that reason. It's like, oh, maybe it's because it's like slower and it's like a little bit more cinematic, but at the same time, it's like I just care too much about. I'm going to notice. That's the thing. It's like I'm going to notice. It's going to feel worse to me, even if it's not. Even if all those extra frames aren't necessary to get the point of the game across, because it's not like a fast-paced action game like Arkham or not Arkham, Gotham Knights is. It's still just my preferred baseline for playing video games, and if I can just wait to play this game at my preferred baseline, I'd rather just do that than jump in and have a subpar experience. I've heard, by the way, very good things about it.
I think it looks cool, man. I've said that before. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I can't do 30 anymore, man. I just can't. No exceptions.
Yeah, I'm basically the same way, just on principle. And I know it could be apples to oranges and it could be a little reductive, but it's like, dude, if they're getting Call of Duty with like a bunch of different players running on PS5 at 60 frames and it looks beautiful, like you can do it. You know, I don't want any excuses as to how this game needs to be at 30 frames for this, that, the other thing. It's like, what nonsense? What are you talking about? That's just weird. And I can only imagine how this game ran on PS4. I mean, I could only imagine what that canceled version was like. They hid this to the very last minute. They hid this. And it's worth noting that no one said this when the game was being played in media rounds, that the game was 30 frames. It wasn't like they were playing a fast 60 frame version. Why didn't anyone report that?
That is weird.
It might have been playing on PC, but I didn't check out any of the previews.
Oh yeah, that's true, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that it's a fairly big deal. I don't know, Dustin, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess just that it's really interesting looking. There's I think a blog post from someone at Insomniac where they talked about, this was many years ago during the PS3 era, that they found that there was no data showing that a better performing game sells better at the time during the PS3 era, is that people cared about graphics and resolution above all else. And now looking back, which I think that people did care about frame rate, which is why Call of Duty succeeded over other FPSs at the time, because it was a 60 FPS game in an era of a lot of 30 FPS shooters. But it's interesting now, and maybe this is something that we can actually thank the console wars for, is how frame rate, and I mean, Digital Foundry, not that they're trying to be cannon fodder for console war stuff, but this brought a lot of attention to frame rates and people started to care about this, which is fantastic as far as I'm concerned, just because there was a time where if you wanted to play games at high frame rates, you had to go to PC. There was no option. And so it's good to see the standard change. And I hope that this is a lesson for other developers, that the standard has changed. And so your development has to change. You have to account for performance modes always now going forward.
All right. I agree, by the way. I just don't understand it. When you have it's as you said, there were pioneering games that people were trying to reach towards, but now that pioneering games don't reach towards that anymore, but rather just deliver that as it is, you would just wonder, well, okay, so what's wrong? That to me makes me wonder what's wrong with your game. I mean, that's like, especially Plague Tale, as much as it doesn't bother me, I'm not going to play it probably anyway, so that doesn't matter, but it's like, wow.
It's the rats.
It's very, the rat physics, of course.
Yeah.
It is though. Like, well,
I
I'll
know,
talk
I know.
about it in a minute.
Yeah, I know. It's just, but it's it's
still
figure it out maybe. But anyway, nonetheless, it's easy for me to say. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Let's get into what we're playing. Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, man. So I mentioned last time that I was going to jump into Dishonored 2 because it was a game that I had skipped out on because when I had first played it on console, it didn't perform well. So I put it down forever. It's weirdly germane to the conversation that we just had. But I mean, it's been however many, probably like 7 or so years. Like it's been a while since Dishonored, probably even longer since Dishonored 2 came out. So I figured I'd jump into it again on PC this time because I heard that was just the best version out the gate. I figured it must be better now. And I've been playing it for about, I think, 4 hours. It's really cool. I really have a lot of love and nostalgia for the first Dishonored. The first Dishonored was so special to me because I remember just being like, wow, this is especially that was one of the earliest, well, not one of the earliest, but like one of the earliest in modern games that I can remember seeing crazy videos of like people breaking that game, like not necessarily in a speedrun way, but doing crazy acrobatics and doing all these insane kills and like all these like creative, almost like trick shot kind of videos. I really like, this is amazing. I can't wait to play this. And I played it and it was great. The first Dishonored. This is very much the same. I like the world of Dunwall a lot, and I forgot how cool it was. And even just like the little things about how thematic the menus are and the little icons that let you know what is interactable. There's like this gray grime over everything, and it's even just like little things like the font of everything that you interact with really sell the world. There's a lot of like newspapers that you can read. It's very arcane in that way. And playing it again actually really reminded me, it's like, wow, this really is, it does feel a lot like Deathloop. Like it does. Like just the way levels are, the way that certain areas are designed and laid out and like scaled, it feels very, very of Deathloop. It reminded me of Deathloop a lot in the sense that like they feel connected in a way that doesn't feel ham-fisted. You know, it doesn't feel like, oh, Callisto Protocol is PUBG, you know, where there's just like going to be some random background reason for why that was a reasonable tie-in.
Dust 514.
Yeah, Dust 514, things like that. But I'm enjoying it. I'm still obviously pretty early. 4 or 5 hours is not really all that deep into Dishonored. But it's really cool. I love stealth games. I'm kind of annoyed that I didn't pick this up a little bit earlier. I will say at the beginning is kind of fucking hard. It's not an easy stealth game because I think a lot of other stealth games have you tuned to this particularly stupid AI. Like I think about Ghost of Tsushima, which by the way, I loved. But you could be very clearly within the line of sight of people, and you know they just wouldn't see you because it's the point of the game. Is, you know, it's like, okay, we make AI's cone of vision intentionally very limited and very stupid so that you can have fun kind of maneuvering around people in satisfying ways. Dishonored is not like that. If you're like if you're on a street lamp and somebody's across the street, most games you'd think, oh, they're not going to see me, but the guy's like, oh, I could see you. You're on a fucking street lamp. So you actually have to like think a lot about how to maneuver around the space, and I found it like really engaging. You could like peek through keyholes and doors, and just like all that little like very Splinter Cell style stealth is very cool. The power sets are really dope. Voice acting is really good. Dishonored 2 is like it's really good so far. I don't know how it ends. It's been a while since I've even heard discussions of Dishonored 2, so I can't remember if it's a game that people loved in comparison to the original. I can't remember what the general.
Yeah, I was looking it up. It launched in 2016, and
yeah, I can't remember if the consensus was that it was better or worse or disappointing or what. But I'm gonna keep that out.
It won PC Gamer's Game of the Year.
Oh, cool!
And it has on PS4 an 88 on Metacritic.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's probably.
I think it's better than the first one.
Really?
Personally.
That's awesome because I loved the first one a lot. So
yeah, me too.
And I will say the beginning is a little bit slower from what I remember the first Dishonored being, but I'm looking forward to getting deeper into it. So that's Dishonored. Really loving it. But I also tried Scorn. I know Dustin is also playing it. I think maybe we can have a little bit of a back and forth. So I played it for about 2 hours. I think I can't stand it. But I'm not sure because it's kind of difficult to tell, because it feels like one of these games. It's like this feels like maybe like a Witcher situation where it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not in the right space for this right now. Maybe if I come back to this at some other point, I'll enjoy it. But there was this puzzle really early on with a bunch of fucking eggs that was just so, it wasn't that it was hard, it was just that it was so deliberately obtuse that it bothered the hell out of me. And it also, there's no like FOV option too, which in first person games like really bothers me. Even though I know it's not supposed to be a fast paced video game, I always like the option to have at least a 100 or like 95 FOV minimum. And it feels a little bit smaller than that. I know that's like a lot more technical than a lot of people expect to get with these kinds of things, but it made the game feel a lot slower, which I guess is, again, the point. It's a very slow kind of atmospheric puzzle game with horror aesthetics. And I do appreciate the art of it. It looks gorgeous, but I don't know if I enjoy playing it. And I want to know what you think about it, since you're also playing it too.
This game filtered me fast. Seriously, 25 minutes. I got filtered on this game. And I think that it's not, I mean, maybe it is a problem with the game, but I feel like it's more so a problem with me in that
right.
They put you start the game and there's no direction at all. And that's okay. I've played games that are like that. And you don't know where to go. You just are in these like set of a few different rooms, and there's some different machines. I don't know. They're too organic to call them machines, but there's some stuff that you can control to try to like figure out this puzzle. I'm at the point where I don't know what the puzzle fucking is. I just go and interact with an object. I'm like, okay, well, this moves this, I guess. I still don't really know where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do. And I think that there is probably a rewarding aspect of figuring out what you need to do as well. But within, like I said, 25 minutes, I thought, at least not right now. This is not the type of game for me at this point right now. And I posted something on Twitter about it, and a lot of people gave me feedback saying that the first puzzle is the most obtuse one, which made me feel somewhat better, but it's not good that your first puzzle is the most confusing part of the entire game. I want to go back to it at some point, but I feel like it would be a really fun game to play either streaming or just with other people, where you can kind of bounce ideas around on how to solve puzzles or what to do. But I definitely felt way too stupid.
See, that's interesting, because I kind of felt almost the opposite, where I was getting frustrated for the same reasons, but I have guests with me right now. You know, I have my friend from England, so we were kind of going through it, and we were bouncing ideas off each other, and it helped me figure it out for sure. But it's such an atmospheric game that I feel like you have to, almost like VR, where you just have to, you can't be talking to other people. You can't have like your Spotify going. You can't have like a YouTube video going. You kind of have to like dim the lights and like kind of like get into it. Now, there's no narrative there to speak of necessarily. There's no characters that you interact with, as far as I'm aware, or as far as I've gotten, there haven't been. But it's just I don't know. It just feels it feels so atmospheric that I can only enjoy it if I'm really fucking secluded. And I feel like having people like backseat game with me while I'm playing it would only make it even more frustrating than it already kind of is.
Right.
Especially with the animation work being so, I mean, the animation is incredible. It's like really good looking. It's a really gorgeous looking game. The art design is stellar. The atmosphere is cool. Like the sound design a lot. The presentation aspects of it are amazing. But when you're going back and forth between these fucking puzzles and you're interacting with this machine that takes about 10 seconds to fully interface with, because the animation work is so good, it's like, it's cool, but I've seen this already, you know, and it kind of gets into why I don't like it in like games like Far Cry or other more fast-paced first-person shooters, where it's like, ooh, you know, look at how good it looks when your main character presses a fucking button on a keypad, and it's like, I don't give a shit. Let me do, like, I very much preferred the Half-Life model when these things were kind of implied. And I kind of almost think, as good as the animation work is in Scorn, I think I almost would prefer being able to interact with things in a more kind of Half-Life, more implied way. even though it's cool to see like your hand like slide into these gross fucking things, and it is cool, but it's less cool the 10th time you see it in the same fucking room because you're stuck in a puzzle that you can't figure out.
Yeah, definitely.
Dustin, it also says that you're playing some other stuff here. I don't know if you want to go through that.
Yeah, sure. So, full disclosure for this next one, I got a code from our associate producer, Ben Smith, who has his own show, HP Podcast. He received a bunch of codes for this game from IllFonic. He gave me one so we could check out the game together, and that is Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. So we played this game a little bit together. It's not bad. It's not great either. It's one of those games that when we played it for, we probably played maybe 2.5 hours, that I thought, this is fun. I'm enjoying it because we're playing together, the 5 of us. And it would be a fantastic PS Plus game, but commanding $40 for this is just a bit much. It is creative, though, in its execution, in that there are 4 people that play as Ghostbusters. 1 person is the ghost. So I like asymmetric multiplayer stuff when it's done right. And what's interesting is that when you're in a match, the ghost's goal is to get 100% haunting of a location. And so they can possess different objects. They can go around and hide in objects, stuff like that. They can slime on the Ghostbusters, whatever, or people, whatever. And obviously the Ghostbusters' job are to bust the ghost. They have 3 respawn points throughout the map that they can like go and find these portals and take them out. And it would like, when I was playing as the ghost, like hiding in objects and having people sneak around me and stuff like that, and not realize I was there was a lot of fun. But I don't know. It was one of those games that after you play for a little bit, it kind of feels like you got your fill. It's almost like an arcade machine or something. You wouldn't necessarily want to play it all the time or whatever, but it was an interesting enough little experience. If you're like a big Ghostbusters fan, then you'll probably absolutely love this. They like recreate all the different locations and stuff like that. But a fun romp with the boys, no doubt. And then Plague Tale Requiem, I'm also playing. And this one I'm playing on the PC. And particularly, I thought about playing it on console, but after seeing the 30 FPS stuff, I decided PC was definitely the better option. And it's pretty good so far. It definitely is stunning visually. And I can see there could be some credence to the argument of why this game is 30 FPS just based on how good it looks. It is definitely absolutely stunning. What's interesting is that I'm even having a lot of frame rate. I don't want to say frame rate problems, but I'm getting some frame rates all over the place on PC on my 3080 and my 3700X Ryzen processor, which I think it's the CPU is what's definitely getting me. And it's particularly, like I was saying earlier, the rats. I can have fantastic frame rate, and then as soon as there's a million rats on screen, it totally craps out. I'll start getting like 45, 50 FPS, which it's not horrible. And if I have a G-Sync monitor, so it's fine. But it's funny because that aspect of the game, when I played Plague Tale Innocence on PS5, there's no, as far as I remember, there was no major frame rate issues with all the rats on screen. And it's not, at least that I've noticed, it's not like there's significantly more rats that would command this game to, buckle under the pressure. But I don't know. Either way, so far I'm enjoying it. It's nice that this game picks up right after the last one finishes. They don't even bother to do a recap. They just go right into it, which I kind of respected, that it's just, hey, this is directly continuing the story of the last game. And yeah, I'm really curious about where it will go. And so far, it's been really good.
I've seen it once before in a rat, and I see it now in men. Once one gets a taste for its own kind, it can spread through the pack like a wildfire, mindlessly chomping and biting at their own hinds. Nothing but the taste of flesh on their minds. You know the thing about a rat? It's got lifeless eyes, black eyes like a doll's eyes. You guys aren't Always Sunny in Philadelphia fans? I guess.
Of course.
Of course. Maybe not that much.
I was just like, what? I was just wondering.
That's what he does. Okay. That's during the Halloween episode when that's a speech from Jaws where he's replacing every shark with rat.
Yeah.
It's fucking hysterical, and I love that. So when you were talking about rats, that's all I can think about. I've seen it once before in a rat. It's like, and it just zooms in on his face for like 35 or 40 seconds. And then,
pretty good.
And then Dennis is like, "Are you doing Jaws?" I love that show so much. What a special show. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I am curious. So you have because I have a 3080 as well. And the issue is that this game is, I'm pretty sure it's on Game Pass for free.
It is,
but it's at 30 frames, and I've heard about the frame rate issues on PC, and I'm like, I thought about like getting it, but I also don't want to do that until that kind of thing is sorted. If that's even possible. Is it worth playing on PC for not like a perfect 60?
Well, partially I'm pushing it really hard because I'm pushing it at 4K and I am using DLSS, which helps.
Right.
But from talking to other people in our Discord, I think that I'm CPU limited, which just my processor is not as nice as my graphics card. So if you have a better processor than me, and if you're not playing it at 4K, maybe, I don't know if you have 1440p monitors or what,
yeah.
You will probably have a much more consistent experience than me, I would bet.
Yeah, all right. Maybe I'll look into that because I do want to play it. I've heard really good things about it.
Pro tip: pull out your Jim Ryan move, get your DualSense, plug that bad boy in, and you get DualSense haptics on the PC.
Oh, does it actually have like the full set of DualSense features on PC? That's dope.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
because I remember the first game doing a pretty even with the subtle stuff with like the original controller, like they did a really good job with like rats.
Yeah, the rats are like creepy crawly in your controller. Feels
That's
good.
Dope. Yeah, I'll take that advice.
Okay, as for me, I have been playing the 2019 PS4 port of the 2013 PS3 and Vita game that came to the West in 2015. The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. Nihon Falcom, of course, developed game. Xseed is the publisher here, although NIS, I think, is the publisher moving forward of most of the games in the series. I've wanted to get into this series for a while. It's been around, specifically prominent on PSP. We're getting some of those games ported over now, and then this series. And there are a few people I know, specifically Maddie, that I trust, that really evangelized this game. And when it came to Vita, I played a little bit of it in like early 2016. I have one trophy from it at that time, I remember, and I just put it away. And then in 2020, I tried it again, and I got a little further, and then I stopped. Now, this is the exact trajectory I was on with Persona 4 the first time. I played it on Vita once, didn't like it, played it on Vita twice, didn't like it, played it on Vita the third time, finally got it. And I am experiencing about 20 hours in now, and a similar thing with The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. I dig this game a lot. I think this is a really, really solid game. I think if you like formulaic, comfortable, tropey Japanese role-playing games, there's actually quite a bit to like here. But I also think if you're looking for Persona-like features that don't feel cheap, like cheap rip-offs, they are, definitely. I mean, when you play it, I was actually laughing in the beginning because it's just so much that's clear. Like, you're getting points for answering questions in class and all these different things we discussed, I think, last week, just your social links and all of this. But it's a little different. What I like about it is that it's really comfortable to play. The quality of life improvements, I think, made all the difference for me on PS4. Playing it on Vita, you play at the very slow plotting frame rate. The battles go really slowly. You can fast forward on the PS4 version, so you can move really fast through things, and it makes all the difference. So while I've played it for 20 hours, I'm probably 25 hours or so into the game, something like that, I would imagine. And I like that it's delivered a little bit like Persona, but instead of going day by day like you do in Persona, you're going like a few days at a time. So you do like a series of days, and then you skip time, and then you do like a series of days. And each chapter in the game is delivered. So you have like this exercise where you go into this old schoolhouse basement that gets deeper and deeper, very Japanese role-playing games, and you're going deeper and deeper into it every chapter. And while you're out of there, you're doing some side quests around the town, you're tending your social links, and then you're sent at the second half of the chapter to what's called a field study, where you get dispatched to a random town and basically just do all that shit there. So you like do tasks for all these different people. But in the background of the game is actually a pretty cool political, economic, and class-based story that I think really, I mean, it's tropey and strange, but it resonates a little bit right now in a time of class division, the haves and have-nots, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. I think we all know that this is happening, and it feels like it has something to say about that, which I think is interesting. And it's based on more specific class, like nobility versus the gentry, I guess, and how that intersects. But it's also about military expansion and militarism. It's incredibly political. Like the thing that when Dustin, when we dismissed it as a and I did it kind of offhand, agreeing like, well, it's like a secondhand or like a cheap store brand Persona. It really isn't. Like it's not quite as good, I think, as Persona 4 Golden, but it's pretty good, and it seems a little more manageable. In fact, I wanted to recommend that I think you might enjoy it if you chose to check it out. I think that there's more there than you might think, and so I really like it. So yeah, it's comfortable to play, very familiar. I like the orderliness of it, all the different themes. There's a system called Arcus in it, which is like your device that you use to fight with. And it's just like materia in Final Fantasy VII. So very easy to understand, your standard equipment and all of that. Really cool soundtrack as well. And then I wanted to ask you this, Dustin. I don't know if we've discussed this per se. What is it about going back to school that's so attractive? And this idea of like doing well in school, studying hard in school, getting along with people in school. There's something foreign about it to my experience, and it's very appealing. I'm 38 years old. Like, is this game really made for me? Like, I have no idea, but it's just very attractive. What do you think about that?
For me, I feel like, I don't know, the school aspect is intriguing, particularly in Persona, because it's a Japanese school, and just seeing how their school is so different than ours, and like they don't, I think they are at school 6 days a week instead of 7. But I don't know if that's an aspect of it that pulls me in. I'm more interested in the interpersonal relationship aspect of it. But I'm trying to remember from Trails of Cold Steel, because it's like is it a military school?
Yeah, it's like a military academy where there are classes like different, and the classes are separated by nobility and then like the commoners. And then there's a 7th class that's kind of like this hybrid of the people that perform the best to get into the school. And so it's a mixture of them. And that's like, there are 9 of them, and that's your party, are the 9 students.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that for me, do you think it's a subconscious level of your own subconscious wanting to be in school again to a better time? And so you can kind of like relive that through a game.
Maybe. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because like for me, I don't know. Like, I'm not the type of person that I don't want to go back to high school ever. Like, not that it was a horrible time for me, but it's just, I feel like my life is a lot better now than it was then. But even then, still, I've had dreams where I'm back in high school before. I don't know why. So maybe there is some small part of my brain that remembers that time and wants to go back to it. I don't know. It's a weird phenomenon. I feel like everyone has high school dreams. Like you're late for class.
Very common. Yeah.
You didn't study or something.
Yeah. School is very traumatic. And
it is. That's a good way of putting it.
And it's to the point where it's a traumatic thing that happens to you for so long that it is a Stockholm syndrome situation almost, where it's like, because it is objectively simpler than whatever the fuck is going on in your lives now. So there is some attractiveness to that simplicity, even though it was at the time incredibly stressful. I mean, I still have dreams about not knowing where my room, not knowing what the classroom is, and like just wandering through the halls. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm late. I don't know where it is. And I'm like, oh, maybe I could check my schedule at the main office. And it's like, oh, I don't know where the main office is either. What the fuck? And it's just like high school or school stress dreams are like super common. But I don't know. I think it's why Harry Potter is so popular too. It's just like there is something attractive about the simplicity of going to a place with your peers, learning something from the same starting point, and then just continuing that until you become really good at it. Even if that's not really the school experience, that's the purpose of the school experience. And there is some entertainment in that, I think.
Yeah, it's it's funny because I think I've encapsulated it as just the very act of growing wisdom and knowing what would be possible if you knew what you knew now. Not about anything else other than doing the right thing, right? Like just studying hard. Look how easy it is. Look how good it is, like we said. And I think you can only know that as an adult, and it probably gets more acute the older you get because you know more. There is something about wisdom. It's true that you just can't know things before it's time. The things that I think about, like my parents instilling in me, and a lot of it got through, but some of it didn't, and they were right. I say that all the time to my dad. I'm like, you were totally right about like a billion different things. And it's not that I was too stupid to know. It's just that I didn't have any wisdom. And so I think it's that wisdom that brings up these possibilities of playing. So like going through this fiction or reading young adult fiction or whatever the case might be. Like when you read The Hunger Games, it's like, there's a comfort there. It's how I feel about Resident Evil. It's weird. It's like, there's a familiarity to it. You feel like you could be there and do it. And even though it's bad, you kind of want to do it. And with this, I don't know. There's just some, I've been very acutely aware of it since Persona 4, where I was like, what is it about this that's so interesting to me? And it's obviously something that's shared by a lot of different fans of this. We're all adults.
I do think that it is fascinating that some of the most engaging games are the ones where, it's a post-apocalypse, it's war, or it's school and dating. That is hilarious to me. Like that those are like genres of video games that people are like really, really into, and it's all like technically very horrifying. Like if you really boil down like your experiences with each of those things, probably wildly negative, in some ways.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the way you put it as traumatic is very well said. I mean, I think that there is a level of trauma to it because it is something that stays with us. And inescapably so.
Maybe there's probably like a deeper psychological conversation to be had here about like, oh, it's cool to have trauma that you can like escape from immediately, like whenever you want it. It's like, oh, I have this class that I have to study for. Never mind. No, I don't. I can just shut the game off and like now I don't have it, and I can just turn that back on whenever you want.
Totally,
it's a little scary.
To what Dustin said earlier, like I don't want to go back to school. I did high school, I did college. I'm like, I have no desire to be back there. So it's not that. It's definitely not that. It's something much deeper and something we all share, which is makes it even stranger. But okay, let's get into some news here. I've had the following news for a few weeks, and I'm ready to tell you about it. So I've been provided with some documents from a noteworthy source that purport to be regarding the Quantic Dream game Star Wars Eclipse. And this game, as far as I can tell, is not even really in production yet. And I have a little bit about what the game might be about, or at least tangentially. The documents I've been provided with describe a couple of characters and some themes and all of this that I think will be at least a part of the main game, but who knows what will happen when the game actually is produced. But this is what I've learned from certainly a reliable source. Number one, hey, so cutting in here real quick, we're going to make a small edit. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things in what I read about this new upcoming game, just to make sure that there are no questions specifically about spelling, what empire we're talking about, and all the rest. I wasn't quite clear in that. So I'm just rereading what I already read with a few edits in the show, and we're just putting that in just to make sure everything's clear about this leak. So that's why you're seeing a cut here, and then we'll get back into the conversation that happened after it. But I want to read number one to you once more. Star Wars Eclipse, developer Quantic Dream's upcoming Star Wars game, is years away from being released. In fact, they haven't even begun capturing for it. But here on Sacred Symbols, we can give you some details on what the game may be about. Eclipse is being co-written by David Cage and Adam Williams. Cage is, of course, the co-founder of Quantic Dream and along its creative lead. Adam Williams co-wrote Quantic Dream's final PlayStation published game, Detroit Become Human, which launched in 2018. Eclipse will be produced by Quantic Dream's co-founder and longtime producer, Guillaume de Fondemer. I can never say that name. And I couldn't say it even in the first time I recorded. So now for the game. Materials seen by this podcast describe a so-called Project S with a character named Sarah as the lead. Sarah is described as an athletic 30-something and is a member of a human-like race. This race is at the lead of some sort of empire called the Zaran. That's Zaraan, a race not seen in Star Wars before. It prides itself on political and military aggression, and similar to what you find elsewhere in Star Wars, there's little differentiation between males and females when it comes to roles and responsibilities, but there's an interesting wrinkle with them. When Zoran marry, their nuptials carry military implications as they become one governing unit that works together. So if they're like an officer, they become one officer. And this is a problem because Sarah, a fanatical true believer in the violence and criminality regularly demonstrated by her empire, is married to a character named Zendo, who is a far softer touch. Part of the game seems to revolve around these two characters and their relationship. Will Sarah embrace their so-called imperial ways or succumb to her husband's pleas for moderation? Quantic Dream, founded in the 90s and owned these days by Chinese corporation NetEase, has developed 5 games up until now, 3 of them 2010's Heavy Rain, 2013's Beyond Two Souls, and 2018's Detroit Become Human, Sony-funded PlayStation second-party games. Eclipse will be published by Lucasfilm Games and is one of an enormous amount of Star Wars games in development across the industry. It's worth noting, as I said in the original recording, that this is purported to be far darker than normal Star Wars, and we know it takes place at a different time than a lot of the Star Wars that we've seen. And so that was actually one of the things I wanted to clarify was when I'm talking about Empire, I'm not talking about the Imperial Empire with the Emperor and all of that. I'm talking about a different empire. So Sarah, Sarah, Zendo, Xendo, Zoran, their race, Zaraan. And yeah, that's what it seems to be about, at least in part. We know that Quantic Dream games come in these little verticals, so there's going to be tension between multiple parts of the game, and I assume that this will be one of them. Like some of the characters you meet, then you go on to another thing, then you go on to another thing, then you come back to them, and so on. That's what my assumption is, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of insight into what Star Wars Eclipse is apparently going to be about, according to a very trusted source. So back to the show as we knew it. Yeah, wanted to just throw that out there. Any thoughts, Dustin?
I would just say that I'm glad that this is outside of the traditional small galaxy syndrome of Star Wars. Seeing an entire new race, new characters, stuff like that, all much more appealing to my interests.
Yeah, I agree. Chris, does this sound attractive to you? Should this come to fruition in the final game?
I mean, it would be cool to see something out of a Star Wars game that isn't just something that isn't just Jedi fuel, you know, like the small galaxy syndrome is a good way to put it, where one of the most annoying things about Star Wars to me is just how inescapable the original trilogy and those original characters have become to every bit of future exploration of the universe. Like even like especially film wise is really terrible with that. And the modern TV shows are kind of have that same problem too. They had like a whole CGI Luke Skywalker. It was so weird. But it's cool to see different sides of a universe that have nothing to do with like the main part of it. I think that's what makes a universe feel real. I'm not super into Star Wars, but I think what's been holding me back is the sheer reliance on the things that I am already kind of not super interested in. So to see, you know, a different side of it would probably help a lot. That said, I'm not like stoked about it. You know, it's still a universe that I still am a little detached from. I would have to see this, and I would have to really get a sense for what this will actually end up being. I did like Detroit Become Human though, so from a gameplay perspective, I'm definitely on board. I guess it's just the Star Wars aspect that doesn't necessarily have me, you know, jumping for joy.
Yeah, it's unclear what the nature of this is as far as if it will end up in the final game, but these details come from a very reliable source. And I'll be interested to see more of what comes of this so-called Project S, whether this is just one vertical, like, because there's a few possibilities. It could be a vertical of the game. We know Quantic Dream games, so we know that they take place with different characters. So this Sarah and Zendo in this case could be one of those sets of whatever that's happening. It could be something that's just being written to pitch the game or get it out there or get something off the ground. Or it could be the entire plot, for all we know, surrounding these two characters. I have no idea. But pretty exciting stuff. I'm not so involved in Star Wars at all anymore to know much more about how to, you know, I went to Wikipedia, I looked these guys up, and I just couldn't find anything more than that. So let's get into it. Number 2. Finally, the rumors have made way for actual concrete details. Multiple Silent Hill games are indeed coming, and all of them have been officially announced thanks to a short presentation Konami gave via video streaming services like YouTube. The biggest announcement of the bunch is a full remake of Silent Hill 2, which came to PlayStation 2 weeks after 9/11. As rumored, this remake is being handled by Polish studio Bloober Team, a studio with an uneven release history spanning the horror genre. Only their 2017 horror game Observer has scored over an 80 on Metacritic, with most of their titles from 2019's Blair Witch to 2016's Layers of Fear and its 2021 sequel hanging around in the 60s and 70s. Their most recent game, The Medium, was a timed Xbox exclusive that came to PS5 late in 2021, and they're working on a third Layers of Fear game as well. Interestingly, the game is being steered at Konami by Motoi Akamoto, an old Nintendo dev, and the director of early Wii hits like Wii Play and Wii Fit. Longtime Bloober artist Matthias Leonard is directing the game. He also directed the aforementioned Blair Witch and The Medium. On the PlayStation blog, Konami admits that many teams submitted ideas for Silent Hill content, and Bloober was amongst the most impressive. OG Silent Hill personnel like sound producer Akira Yamaoka and designer Masahiro Ito are consulting on the project, and it's a timed console exclusive for PlayStation 5 for at least 1 year. Silent Hill 2 Remake is being built on Unreal Engine 5, and the PS5's SSD will ensure that the entire town of Silent Hill can be explored without loading times. Release timing is still unknown. Next up is an all-new Silent Hill game called, for now, Silent Hill F. As relayed by website Video Games Chronicle, the trailer blurb reads, quote, Silent Hill F will be a completely new story set in 1960s Japan, featuring a beautiful yet horrifying world. Written by Ryukishi 07, famed for Japanese visual novels dealing with murder mysteries, psychological, and supernatural horrors, end quote. I looked up that guy. That's his pen name, but I couldn't actually find the person's real name. The game is under development at Taiwanese studio Neobards Entertainment, and if you don't know that name, you probably wouldn't. Before being contracted for this project, they had a long-running relationship with rival publisher Capcom and helped develop the Resident Evil Reverse multiplayer project that was supposed to launch alongside Resident Evil Village in 2021, but which still hasn't come out. It comes out at the end of the month. Their Silent Hill project has no release date or target platforms. Other projects include Capcom ports. Other projects that they've done include Capcom ports like the 2019 PS4 port of the original Onimusha, and before that, the Devil May Cry collection. Next up is a project called Silent Hill Townfall, and this one's being published by Annapurna Interactive, which had also been long rumored to be involved with Silent Hill. The studio making this game is in Scotland. They're called No Code, and they're perhaps best known for an adventure game, Observation, which came to PS4 in 2019. It's unclear what kind of game this is, but considering the team's past, it's likely an adventure game itself. And then there are two multimedia projects, a streaming series of some sort called Silent Hill Ascension that launches in the summer of 2023, as well as an all-new film called Return to Silent Hill, the latter of which is lacking a release date, though some of the original 2006 Silent Hill movie's staff is involved. Silent Hill, a rival survival horror series to Capcom's dominant Resident Evil / Biohazard franchise, first launched on PS1 in 1999. The 2001 PS2 sequel is widely considered one of the best survival horror games of all time, and a third and fourth game each followed, also on PS2 in 2003 and 2004. 2012's Silent Hill Downpour on PS3 was the last mainline game in the franchise, though the last big release was actually a Vita game, also released in 2012 called Book of Memories, that comes from Way Forward. The most famous game demo of all time, 2014's PS4 exclusive PT, was the makings of a Kojima-led Silent Hill revival called Silent Hills. However, acrimony between Konami and Kojima during Metal Gear Solid 5's development toxified the situation permanently. Kojima left Konami right after Metal Gear Solid 5 launched in 2015, and Silent Hills was subsequently canceled. So Andreas wrote in and said, the Silent Hill announcements have confirmed my idea that the horror games community are to video games what pretentious Pet Sounds audio fanatics are to music. They're quick to dismiss anything new and have nothing but negative things to say should anything attempt to touch or emulate their precious original works. As a Silent Hill 2 fan, I'm excited for the remake, especially with the two people on board from the original team. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts. Let's start with you, Chris. How are you feeling about these announcements? I feel like people should be a little skeptical. Why is Konami working with these teams on Silent Hill when there's probably some level of desperation for bigger teams to work on them? It just comes off to me as we don't know what the final products will be. I'm hopeful that they're good. I'm rooting for Konami. I want Konami to do well, but it comes off as a little bit of like trying to have your cake and eat it too. If you want a AAA game like Resident Evil 4 Remake or Resident Evil 2 Remake or whatever they're trying to replicate with Silent Hill 2, you got to pay for it. And it seems like they're finding partners that allow them to play this kind of A-level dance. And I don't think it's not exciting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little conflicted because I think no doubt there's a lot of this that doesn't interest me. I'm not particularly interested in, this TV show and movie. Like it's amazing how little I care. But as far as Silent Hill 2 Remake, I know a lot of people have their issues with Bloober Team. I know the Medium wasn't particularly good. But at the same time, the early part, there's a point in the Medium, especially early on, where I was playing and I was like, wow, I feel like these guys would make a really good Silent Hill. It quickly, immediately got off the rails. But I feel like because they're working on a remake, there's really not that much room for, like, I don't see much reason for concern about this, to be honest. I feel like it's a little bit overblown. I think Bloober Team has a framework that they have to stick by. I think they're really good at like setting atmosphere. They're just not good at writing their own original stuff to inform that atmosphere. And I'm actually kind of bullish about the Silent Hill 2 remake. As far as Silent Hill F goes, I do kind of agree. I don't know what I've never heard of this guy. I don't know what we can expect out of this. I don't know what this game by the Observer devs could really possibly be in any way that's meaningful to the Silent Hill name. I think when you're continuing Silent Hill in a sequel capacity, or in like a, hey, here's a new experience, you do kind of want to be a little bit more judicious about who you're going to work with. I'm a little bit less on board with that thought with the remake, though. I think Bloober Team is more than capable of doing it, honestly. But I'm not super excited about anything that isn't the remake. Although F looks beautiful from like the little screenshots that we saw. I like the idea behind it, but I don't know.
Yeah, the idea sounds sweet, but I agree. The insistence on using unknown partners, I mean, I guess it could work out, but I don't know. Dustin, what do you think about these announcements?
Yeah, I want to see Bloober Team succeed, and I'll say that at the top. But I can understand why people are upset with this decision. Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the greatest games of all time, at the very least, one of the best horror games of all time. And you want to see it taken care of by a team that people feel is a competent team that's done hopefully at least a few very good games, being that they're working on what many consider is one of the greats, So I totally can understand that frustration. With that being said, I think that what they showed looked really good. I don't have any complaints about what they showed off, but I don't know. It's weird to see this approach with all three of the games that they revealed. Just that these more unknown teams, and it got me thinking though, who would it be that we would want to see remake Silent Hill 2? Who would we want to see make a new Silent Hill game? And then it kind of made a little more sense to me that maybe this is just kind of the options that they have before them, since they really, I don't think, have any kind of internal development anymore. So I don't know. There's a few other teams that I think maybe could have been better contenders, like Frictional Games, who does the Amnesia games, or Red Barrels, who did Outlast, though arguably those are around the same level as a Bloober Team as far as scores, but at least much more fondly remembered from more recent games. But I don't know. I can understand both perspectives about people being annoyed at everything and not willing to wait and see what actually comes out. But I can also understand wanting to be protective about a game that is beloved to many people.
I think just one quick thing. I think this would be a lot less frustrating had we not publicly seen Silent Hills die.
Right. That was the most promising project of them all.
Because, because even now, like that is still way more exciting and interesting than anything we see here. But if we didn't have that framework, like if PT wasn't there, if we never heard anything about, Kojima working on a Silent Hill game, I don't know if people would have that much negative to say about this, because I feel like a lot more people would be happy just to see it come back in some way. Whereas as opposed to almost coming back, dying on the vine with like a lot of promise, and then kind of whimpering back with like, hey, here's Bloober Team with this thing. And it's like, I think the story of Silent Hills and Kojima is still very, very much remembered and plays a very important part in how people are reacting to this.
Yeah, that could be. I also think that there is some wisdom in this idea that what Dustin is saying of like, who else would really make these games? I think Well, I know for a fact that Capcom is using studios that no one's ever heard of to make their Resident Evil games. I just trust them to use their internal resources and their production know-how to guide them. And I don't know that Konami has that. I think they've shown a lot of promise in small ways, especially with their collections. They've done a really nice job with those. But we've not seen a AAA Konami game in a very long time. I mean, if you don't count Metal Gear Survive, I mean, what is the last AAA game? It was 7 years ago, I would say, from Konami at this point. And so I just don't know how that turns out. And this next question, I think, gets into it a little bit for me. Alex Baldwin wrote in and said, "Hello, mates. Just want to write in about Silent Hill's spin-off game Townfall. I feel like it will be overshadowed by the remake, but as a longtime Silent Hill fan, it's about the only thing in the entire showcase that appealed to me. Letting a small but quality studio like No Code take the reins for what will probably be a few hour-long side story is far from the worst thing they can do with the franchise." I agree, but this goes into what I say often, which is, can't they just justify the return with one product? Can't you just get one game going or like announce one thing at a time? Silent Hill has been dormant for 10 years, and I don't think you need to announce 3 different games and 2 different multimedia projects at the same time for it. Why not just announce one game? And
we don't need the SHU right off the bat, the Silent Hill universe.
Right, exactly. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. That's totally correct.
It's a bit much for a resurgence.
Well, and especially if these 3 games end up being shit. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you would have been better off just making one really good game and kind of bringing back Silent Hill. And instead, we're kind of getting like a shotgun approach.
One thing I will say is that I appreciate that Konami is coming back. Like, it's time. I think it's a good sign. We already have heard rumors of Metal Gear coming back, Castlevania coming back, probably Contra. It's time. And I'm pulling for them. I want this to be awesome. I really hope that it is. Konami is missed. I mean, Konami is very missed. Their flavor of game is one of my favorites. They're one of my favorite companies growing up. And it was a devastating loss for them to go away and for us to be without Castlevania and without all these different things for so long. It's time to bring them back into the fold. They've waited too long. I think that's why they feel this need to bring back projects with multiple games. I would just encourage them to slow their roll. It doesn't mean that these games can't all be in development. We just don't need to know about them all right this second. And I do think that out of all of them, Silent Hill 2 is a great game, but Silent Hill F sounds great. I just don't know why anyone should trust the studio that was supposed to deliver a multiplayer mode for a Resident Evil game that was supposed to come out 18 months ago. And it's about to come out in a couple of weeks. Now, I'm not going to say it's all their fault. They have production help on the outside, but that's not good. Why would I be excited about that?
They also did the next gen versions of Resident Evil 2, 3, and 7, which at least on PC all had issues. And they also worked on Marvel's Avengers before that. So
yeah, these are great. I mean, it's
exciting.
It's a Taiwanese for hire studio. We'll see. That's the writer I took a little more seriously than the studio, because that writer, Ryukishi or whatever, he has a Wikipedia page and everything and all the things that person wrote. I just I don't know much about that scene, obviously, so can't speak to it, but that might be very attractive to fans of horror. And then the Townfall game, it's just, I don't know. I'm glad, Alex, that you're excited about that. Others are excited about that, but that one to me is the least consequential. Like, that's the one you need to get in between the first and second releases, is an interstitial like that. You don't start with, I don't care about your Silent Hill interstitial if you're not going to demand respect from a AAA Silent Hill game, which is what people really want. So anyway, that's my take.
I'm just glad they added fall at the end of the title.
Oh,
you know, we needed more of that. We need more falls.
Oh, yeah,
so
Destiny,
thank you.
What do you want it to be called? Silent Hill Town?
Anything without fall in it at this point would be good.
It's true. They've somehow gotten that word into something as innocuous as town. True enough. Okay, my friends, number 3. Episodes ago, we discussed one of the PlayStation brand's newest offerings, a pro-style first-party DualSense controller called DualSense Edge. While we got a good idea of its functionality during its announcement, 2 important details remained hanging: the date it would come out and how much it would cost when it does. Thanks to a post on the official PlayStation blog, we now have a solid idea. DualSense Edge will launch on January 26th, early in 2023, and it will cost $200, or your local equivalent. Around the time this podcast goes live on free feeds, you should be able to pre-order one for yourself. As noted in the posting, quote, "The DualSense Edge wireless controller features a host of hardware and software-based personalization options, including button remapping, the ability to fine-tune stick sensitivity and triggers, options to swap between multiple controller profiles, and a unique on-controller user interface. It also sports the signature comfort and immersive features of the DualSense wireless controller, like haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. You can make the DualSense Edge wireless controller uniquely yours with the included 3 changeable sets of stick caps and 2 changeable sets of back buttons. Everything will come bundled in the included carrying case, and you can even charge the controller via USB connection while it's stored in the case to make sure you're always ready for the next play session, end quote. This is the first time in the so-called pro controller era that Sony has bothered to release a controller of its own. It has in the past licensed rights to various controllers to third-party vendors. The reason for this is obvious. It's a no-lose situation. Making hardware is very expensive, and Sony knows how to do it better than virtually anyone, but it's that last key point that's important. Sony knows that. With the cost of hardware manufacture comes the higher overhead of selling it at a profit, and they've finally bitten the bullet. Arch rival Microsoft has had a pro-style controller since the early days of Xbox One, and it remains very popular. Now, Dustin, we have to give you your flowers. Awesemo55 wrote in and said, "Hi, CDC. Congrats to Dustin for being 100% correct on the $199 price point for the new PS5 Edge controller. What is your favorite prediction that ended up being correct?" I have no idea, but we're going to stick with this one for right now. I make predictions all the time that are correct, and always I make predictions that are wrong as well, so who cares? Awesemo55, giving you your flowers nonetheless, Dustin. You did predict this controller would be $199. It seemed unbelievable, but reasonable considering the cost of electronics, inflation, etc. It's very expensive, though, in my mind.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think to me it made sense just because Xbox, their Pro controller is priced at $170, $180-ish, and it goes on sale regularly. And this has DualSense stuff, you know, the haptics, the triggers. So that was clear justification for them to, at least in their mind, to charge more for their Pro controller. But overall, I would be hesitant to pre-order this thing personally. I would let people check it out first. When you have a device like this that is highly customizable, you can take out different components, put new ones in. I would just be weary about being an early adopter because we saw this with Xbox's Elite controller. In fact, to this day, there's a lot of people that argue that there's a lot of quality control problems. So I won't be buying this day one, but I am interested in it simply for the fact of the back buttons are just absolutely essential. It's painful for me to use a controller without them, but I just don't want to end up buying a $200 dud. So we'll wait and see what people say.
What do you think, Chris? Are you going to buy this thing?
I don't know, man. Like I don't use as much as I like the Xbox Elite controller. I don't use it as much as I thought I would, just because it's almost got this weird kind of paradoxical nature to it where I spent so much money on it that I don't want to wear it down. Like it's like, oh, I really like the way this controller looks and how cool it is. I don't want to break it. So it's just been sitting in in the case. And that's with a controller that's cheaper than this. And I have a feeling that it's probably going to be the same situation where it's just like I would rather put my normal controllers through the wear and tear than do it to a controller that I really like. And so with something that's even more expensive, and quite frankly, the ergonomics of the DualSense is just not, I just don't think they're as good as the Xbox controller, to be perfectly frank with you. Like I feel like they've got something with the Xbox controller that feels like really perfect. Like I don't know if it's you guys too, but my hands hurt after like a long play session with very specific games with the DualSense. I don't know what they can really do about that, because that's just a form factor, and because this is the same exact form factor, I don't know if it's the biggest sell for me, especially somebody who's not super huge on the haptics in the first place. Like I always turn them off, especially for like competitive stuff. So I mean, no doubt this is going to be really cool. I might buy one just to try it out and just to have it. But I will say it's a really bullish price, especially considering, you know, the economic realities of today. I feel like they should have gone on this like way long ago. Personally, I feel like it would have been a bit of an easier pill for a lot of people to swallow than it would be today. Microsoft was really smart getting this out like super, super fucking early. But, you know, better late than never, you know. And if anybody wants those options, I mean, you got it now. And if you've never used the souped up controller before, I recommend it. If you've never bought a really high quality, like if you don't own the Elite controller, for example, and you're like super stoked about DualSense, like absolutely, like give this a shot, because it's going to convince you for a while, and it's going to be a really cool experience. But I just worry too much about expensive shit.
Yeah. I think too, if you're like a competitive FPS player, there's a lot of features that are going to be appealing to you, whether it's making the trigger pull shorter, changing out the sticks, the back buttons. If you just play non-competitive games, surely there's going to be things that will appeal to you, but you won't be taking full advantage of it for sure. Like the Elite controller, I kind of changed a few things around for Halo, but I definitely wasn't using it to its full advantage. And especially now that I'm not playing Halo, I kind of just use it like a normal controller that feels a little bit better.
Yeah, that's kind of why I started, because I was experimenting with it for a while, but then once I started using it like a normal controller, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just use my normal controller. But
I was gonna say it seems like Sony is entering an era we haven't really seen since the PS1 era and the PS2 era of like accessorizing a lot.
Yeah,
we're
cool.
having the upcoming PSVR, obviously, which be its own unit. The detachable disk drive apparently is coming. It just seems like they're going to kind of try to break things up and extract more profit from more purchases by making maybe base units a little cheaper and more accessible. So I don't really mind the idea of a controller being $200, but that's like, at 40% of the cost of the console, it does seem extreme. Those kinds of controllers, I appreciate them, but I don't need one. Because what I really loved about the Pro controller, the Xbox One Pro controller, was how heavy it was, and we have that in the DualSense. So now I'm set. I don't need all the extra buttons and accoutrements because I wouldn't even know what to do with them. I don't play those kinds of games, so I have no desire to even go down that road. But it does seem like a heavy ask, and it does make me wonder how much PSVR is going to cost. PSVR 2. Okay. Number 4, this just broke before we started recording, actually. An interesting rumor emerged right before we began this podcast, and it has to do with one of developer Bungie's, very earliest games. As we all know, Bungie, as of earlier this year, is a Sony-owned studio, though it doesn't fall within the PlayStation Studios family, but rather aside it. They vow to remain fiercely multi-console, even under PlayStation's umbrella, but some of you will recall that Bungie was at one time stuck like glue to one company, Apple. It's on macOS that Bungie created its first games, like 1991's Operation Desert Storm and 1993's Pathways into Darkness. But in 1994, they released a very important game indeed, Marathon. Indeed, Marathon has its reputation as being one of the very few games to see life on Apple's failed mid-90s console, the Pippin. It's an FPS, and it paved the way for a little game Bungie would release 7 years later on the original Xbox, Halo. Well, according to a well-known and reliable industry insider, Tom Henderson, writing on his website Insider Gaming, Bungie is planning a Marathon comeback. He writes in part that, quote, according to sources, Bungie is set to bring back the Marathon series with a new game that will be a 3-man squad extraction-based shooter. The title is in pre-alpha state, but it could be announced at any point given the industry's competition for talent. Marathon takes place on a planet that was previously home to a human colony that vanished, with humans using highly customized cyborgs called runners to gather loot. It's understood that the gameplay loop of Marathon is similar to most extraction-based shooters. Choose a mission, buy and choose your loadout, drop into a map, hunt for loot, and complete missions, and then extract safely, end quote. This is quite unlike the original Marathon and its 1995 sequel, which were linear, Halo-like FPSs with both single-player and multiplayer functionality. Bungie, one of the most important studios in the games as a service space, still plans on supporting its mega popular, I said Bungie 2 here, Destiny 2, well into the future as well. This game is presumed to be ready for perhaps 2025. So, Chris, I couldn't help but think of you. What do you think about this? Tom Henderson, totally reliable, so I believe it. What do you think of Marathon coming back? It's a big surprise. We haven't seen. There was a third Marathon game. I think that came out in 1996. So it's been 26 years.
Yeah, it was Marathon, then Marathon, I think Durandal, and then Marathon Infinity. That was the trilogy back then. I'm stoked about this. I really liked Marathon. It's interesting because it exists. It's such an old game and such a niche game that simply existing again would be amazing. I'm not really adamant about it being like, oh, it needs to be like a faithful Marathon. I don't really need that because Bungie's art design is so strong, and just the idea of them putting a team together to make something Marathon related that is a little inspired by like Tarkov, like inspired by Escape from Tarkov or something. It's really interesting. I think they could really nail it. I really like Marathon a lot, both from like an art design perspective and just a general universe perspective. A lot of that universe obviously would later go on to like be a little bit repurposed and kind of flavor out the more extended lore of Halo as it went forward. But Marathon's dope. It's cool to see old games like this get brought back. It's very rare too to see something like this be resurrected by the studio that created it, and that too is something that's very, very worth looking at, because we have games like Perfect Dark over at the Initiative, which you know very well that nobody at the Initiative had anything to do with Perfect Dark, and if they did, it's like a very, very minimal amount. And so to see that kind of historical lineage brought forward again is really cool. I remember playing Marathon a long time ago when I was going through Bungie's like older stuff. I've even played Pathways into Darkness. Like I've delved pretty deep back into their stuff. And Marathon was awesome. There was a lot of stuff to like about it. I understand this is going to be very, very different, but anything new out of Bungie is immediately going to catch my eye, because they've rarely, if ever, missed. And even when they do miss, they have a really good tendency of really, really getting things back on track. So I'm looking forward to this. This is cool. I remember hearing about this a long time ago, by the way. Like I remember hearing oh my God, maybe 2019, 2020, that they were considering something along the lines of bringing Marathon back. So it's cool to see that that's real.
Yeah, so it seems. I think he's right, or Tom's right, in the sense that maybe they'll announce it soon as things get more competitive. It's hard. You say maybe they'll miss. It's hard for me to imagine Bungie missing. That would be akin to Naughty Dog missing or Insomniac. I just don't think that's going to happen.
That's what I mean. They the only thing, it's games as a service is a really fickle space. So it's very, that's why I say, like, because the original Destiny missed a little bit. I would say that the original vanilla Destiny 2 missed a little bit. It's a little bit more forgivable with games that evolve over time, as opposed to like, hey, here's if Naughty Dog put out The Last of Us Part 3 and it was just terrible on launch, that's very difficult to imagine. But also that would be just the story of that game from then on. So that's the only reason I say that. But I have a lot of faith in Bungie. They're especially in an FPS format, like I have no reason to doubt them.
Marathon is interesting because I think if you count the Pippin as a real home console, which I guess you would, even though no one had one, that's a really, really early, probably first 5 FPSs on console ever. Because you would have Doom and Wolfenstein on SNES and maybe some other shit. So it's just interesting to think that and I love this mercenary nature of them. And this is what I wanted to pitch to you, Dustin, was there's something attractive about it. They've been with all of the different players now, basically with the exception of Nintendo. I like it. It's like they get married and then they divorce them. And it's not only with the first parties or like at a company like Apple, they were with Apple hardcore. Then Microsoft bought them, right? Or they were with Microsoft, then Microsoft bought them. Then they bought themselves out. Then they were with Activision, biggest publisher in the world. Then they got bought by Sony. You almost feel like, even though maybe it ends here, you could almost imagine a future where they are then spun off once more because they want to go. And they have like something to do in the here and now. But I wonder, do we take Sony at its word that Marathon is not a PlayStation game? I have to imagine that this is a multi-platform attempt and that we have to just kind of take them at their word. I wonder what you think about the nature of the game in terms of its release.
Yeah, I think that it will definitely be multi-platform, because I'm guessing that there's a high possibility that it could be a free-to-play service-based game. It seems like this, the extraction shooter, at least when I quickly searched it on Google, there's a lot of people writing about how this could be the next or the evolution of battle royale games, this idea of PvP VE. And we have some games already that are really popular in this kind of space, particularly Escape from Tarkov, which what is also interesting is that Call of Duty is going to start doing this as well in Warzone 2, is this kind of extraction type gameplay.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that Sony and Bungie would want to be part of this new wave of what's popular in FPS games. And I think that in a lot of ways, too, You have to imagine, as proud as Bungie probably is of the current state of Destiny 2, there's probably some fatigue there that they want to make other stuff. I don't think that they ever intended to just make Destiny for whatever the 10 or 15 year period when they started. So it's exciting to see a team who has only done one thing for so long, and before that only did one thing for a really long time, do something totally new again.
I like it. I also think it's necessary probably for the cleansing of, you want like your staff, you want to keep everyone or as many people happy as possible. One of the things you hear about Guerrilla is that they kind of shed a lot of the people that worked on Killzone over time because they weren't making shooters anymore. And really the smartest thing to do would have been to kept them happy by making a shooter. If you have the money and the means to do that, and the mode and the tradition and the culture and all of that, then do it. I like that they are one and then the next and then the next. And you have to assume that in addition to their technological know-how and their kind of foot in the games as a service space and the respect that they command with Destiny 2, that's a huge part, and the talent that they're going to get. But Sony certainly saw Marathon behind the scenes. I mean, you have to imagine that this game played in to the acquisition of the studio.
Yeah.
And I mean, this, I'm sure, wasn't a secret as they were spinning it up. And so who knows what the future holds for this. I would like to see something new, by the way, as well.
Yeah. I'm stoked about it. I think it's the way you brought up about them being kind of with everybody at some point is also kind of, because they must have like a lot of interesting, just kind of grandfathered in knowledge at this point, having worked with so many of these. I mean, even with Apple going that far back, I mean, Steve Jobs announced Halo in 1999, which is such a crazy, like that was supposed to be an Apple game, and then Microsoft bought it. Yep. I was like, fuck you.
Wise to do.
Wise. Super wise.
Change the whole trajectory of everything with that.
Yeah.
But one of the, it's interesting, Chris, because with the exception of a studio like Rare and just a select few others, there's no team that has been with multiple parties like that before. And it didn't work out very well for Rare. I mean, I think they're finally getting there. You were talking about, what are they working on? Jet Force Gemini? No.
They're working on
Perfect Dark. Well, it's like, I mean, I'm sorry. What we're talking about with the initiative working on Perfect Dark. It's like the people that even worked at that Rare are long gone. Those are the guys that went and made like Ukulele and all that kind of shit. So it's just, it doesn't always work out like this, but I think for them, they've managed to make it work very, very well. They've remained staunchly independent and have somehow maintained total control the entire time. It's crazy. That's why I'm not totally convinced that this is the last stop. When a company has that sort of inertia where it just finds itself with a bunch of different partners, it's like, why would it necessarily stop here? This isn't the first or even the second time that someone has purchased them, Yeah. So, or that there's been massive publishing money, I should say, changing hands as well. It's not just a purchase. Okay. This one's for you, Chris. I wrote this one up. One of Ubisoft's most popular franchises ever, at least back in the day, was a little Tom Clancy aligned series called Splinter Cell. The stealth shooter franchise began way back in 2002 when the original came to PlayStation 2. Two sequels followed, 2004's Pandora Tomorrow and 2005's Chaos Theory, also on PS2. From here, Clancy games became increasingly big, and Splinter Cell met a weird period, at least for PlayStation fans. 2006's Splinter Cell Essentials on PSP was met with a poor critical reception, and 2006's Splinter Cell Double Agent on PS2 would come to PS3 in 2007, but not light the world on fire. And Splinter Cell Conviction, considered by some to be the best game in the entire franchise, never came to PlayStation platforms at all. It launched on Xbox 360 in 2010. The last Splinter Cell game we saw was in the summer of 2013 when Blacklist came to PlayStation 3. And after nearly a decade of confusing silence and haranguing, Ubisoft has finally revealed, or it did already, that it's remaking the original 2002 Splinter Cell for modern consoles. The announcement occurred at the end of 2021, and there's already bad news. Its director, the linchpin of the project, has left. Longtime Ubisoft designer David Grivell was set to make his directorial debut with Splinter Cell Remake, but website Video Games Chronicle notes that an updated LinkedIn profile indicates his exit, with him briefly noting that he's going on, quote-unquote, a new adventure. Grivell got his start at Crytek before moving to Ubisoft about a decade ago, where he worked as a designer on the last two Splinter Cell games, as well as Assassin's Creed Unity, which launched in 2014. His last credit was as lead designer of the 2016 Far Cry spinoff Primal, which was surprisingly good, and which came to PlayStation 4 that year. As for the future of Splinter Cell, who knows?
Yeah.
So the director is already out, not even a year in. Not a good sign. maybe a purge necessary at this point, but I don't know how that could be interpreted as good. What do you think of this?
It's just disappointing. It's I don't know what else I could really say other than just honestly at this point, just leave it alone. Just bring those old games. Like, you have a collection on PS3 already. Mm-hmm. Just port that over. I'll be satisfied with that. At this point, I'm just worried that you're just gonna fuck it up. And I'd rather you not dig up a grave just to dress it up in like a clown outfit, just to try and convince me that, oh, hey, he's still here. Like, no, I don't want the writing's on the wall with this. I don't want it. We saw how Halo Infinite shaped up after however many lead fucking creative directors or whoever fucking like just general game directors left. I don't want this. I'm no longer excited. I love Splinter Cell very deeply. Those first 3 games, even, Conviction. I'm actually surprised to hear that Conviction is like critically acclaimed or like, not critically acclaimed, but like well liked, because I remember back in the day people like not liking it.
Oh, maybe I have that wrong. I was looking at I thought the Metacritic scores, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, it could just be like my friends, you know what I mean? Like, it was more action oriented than a lot of other. I thought it was great, but it was definitely less of a stealth game. But whatever. It was awesome. Double Agent was good too. I love these games and I love stealth games in general. That's why I'm playing Dishonored 2 again, and just trying to delve into that space. But if seeing Splinter Cell return means seeing just this sad reemergence of something that is just not up to snuff, I'd rather not have that, quite frankly. Sometimes things are better left alone. And if you can't figure out how to do it, then there's no shame in just doing something else.
I think it's weird that Ubisoft seems to have dropped the ball with
everything.
With a lot of, not everything, because I do think some of it has worked out for them. I really like The Division, for instance. I think I know a lot of people don't, but I really do like that. I'm not going to say
that was a while ago, though.
That's true. Fair. Yeah, The Division 2 was 2019, I want to say. Heartland, hopefully soon. That looks cool, and sounds really cool, I think, too. But and I love Far Cry, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't like Ubisoft games or I don't support them. But I do find it strange that they seem to drop the ball. They dropped the ball with Beyond Good and Evil, the remake, and Beyond Good and Evil 2 and all of these different things. Like what happened with that? I just don't understand what is going on there. And then you see something like this, and I find it so perplexing because Tom Clancy remains a really big name. They own it. They own Tom Clancy's name, as sad as that is. Poor dead Tom Clancy. But when you have this general respect of military shooters, and you deliver things that people like The Division or like Siege, whatever, over all this time, going all the way back to games like Rainbow Six 3 and all of these games, they have a long series of respect, and Splinter Cell they just don't seem to get, and I don't understand it because there is a huge vacuum for that kind of game. There aren't very many games that do that anymore. Like, you would almost look at Splinter Cell's contemporaries as the latter Siphon Filter games, maybe Metal Gear, and then some other random stealth games like Hitman or something. But I don't know. I just don't understand why they haven't continued this and how hard it can possibly be to do it. It's so strange. They're making games way bigger and broader than anything a Splinter Cell game has to be. I don't understand how you can deliver a game like Far Cry 6, which is just, I love it. I thought it was awesome, but it's fucking also huge and just immaculately made. And then it's like, we can't make a fucking 12-level Splinter Cell game? That's just strange to me. You think that would be like the not challenging at all compared to what you're doing?
No, especially because like you'd imagine that the bulk of the work would really go into just, the work is already done for you, really. Like,
yeah, if you're remaking it, for sure. Yeah.
If you're remaking it, I understand maybe you want to reimagine it, maybe you want to expand it a little more, but even if you expanded it a little bit, it wouldn't amount to even a fraction of the work that you spend making a Far Cry game. And you'd have to imagine that a lot of the cool factor of a remake of Splinter Cell would probably be in just how it looks. Like, just like having, like, Splinter Cell was one of the first games that I can remember dealing with like real time, like, or at least from what I can remember as a child, one of the first games that I saw use dynamic shadows in like really interesting ways, because you had to like actually stay in the shadow. You could shoot lights out. I remember really vividly seeing light coming through a fan and the fan turning and it reflecting the actual real time shadows of the fan. And I remember just being like, wow, this is amazing looking. So just to do that with modern hardware, with a much more constrained game where you have a lot of flexibility in making that game look incredible, you make open world games look pretty damn good. It is very confusing, especially because it's a third person game too, like which they also do pretty fucking frequently. It's a very weird. It's just confusing. I really don't know what else to say about this other than it's disappointing to see this go through so much trouble already. And I just don't. I don't know. I'd rather leave a good thing unsullied, personally.
Do you have anything you want to add before we move on, Dustin?
Yes. I think you guys are potentially way off base. Here's why. Is that, sure, this project was announced a year ago. This guy that was directing the game has one credit on a Splinter Cell game before. And so obviously a director leaving in a project during a project is not a good thing, but I'm sure there are plenty of capable people that maybe know Splinter Cell better than this guy did. Probably. And we also don't know the reason behind why he left. I mean, we could endlessly speculate. Maybe it's a family issue. Maybe it's a health-related reason. Maybe it's he wasn't doing a good job and they realized that and decided to put someone else in who they thought would be better equipped and had more experience as a game director. That is purely conjecture, of course. But, you can easily flip a lot of the arguments you guys are making about this being a bad thing into being a good thing as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to take away that a director leaving is never a good. Well, I don't know about never, but almost always not a good thing for a game, right? But I don't know. I think that with it happening pretty early on, with somebody who isn't like the guy connected to Splinter Cell, doesn't mean that we need to raise every red flag that this game is either not going to happen or not be good.
I know what you're saying. It's not like Joseph Staten leaving the Halo team. You know what I mean? Like that would be disastrous to the point where that would kill it, I think. But I guess for me, it's more, this is the last remaining part of my youth that has not been dragged kicking and screaming back up in a way that like everything else has either been ruined or done competently. And then the studios went away. Like I think about like Crash Bandicoot 4, which I thought was like actually really, really well done. And then like, oh, just kidding. You're going to join the Call of Duty Borg, or, same thing with like Toys for Bob and stuff. And I think obviously Halo's been through like a crazy amount of bullshit. So like for me, Splinter Cell is the one thing that has remained like untouched, and to see it being brought back concerns me only because it's literally the last thing for me. So it's like either get this right or don't do it. So I'm gonna be the second anything's like a little bit off, I'm like, oh no, shut it, please shut it down. I'm a little touchy about it because I love Splinter Cell a lot, and I think more people should, because it's really, I think if you haven't, I understand these games aren't for everybody, and I understand that maybe some people might have a little bit of difficulty getting into games that have a little bit, that are a little tanky as far as controls go. But if you are a fan of stealth at all, I really think you owe it to yourself to play at least one of those original Splinter Cell games, because there's really something immaculately special about them. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, even as somebody who really, really enjoys it. But there's really something special there, and I just want them to nail it. But you're probably right. Like, this guy didn't seem like a particularly important part of the puzzle or anything. Right. It's just not a great sign generally.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. I'm sorry, Dustin.
Well, a quick side note. Yeah. I just didn't know if Chris was finished. But side note, you mentioned the track record about Ubisoft. I saw this the other day. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has broken the record for longest game development time from Duke Nukem Forever. Yeah,
it passed Duke Nukem Forever.
Which is, it's weird because like Duke Nukem Forever, when was that first announced? Was it
forever ago?
Oh, yeah. It just feels like that
was announced in the 90s, I want to say.
That's what I was going to, it feels like it was well before my time. And so it felt like that game was always in development. And now I remember when Beyond Good and Evil 2 got announced, and now it's longer than that. So the point is we're dying. And that's just another indicator.
Well, I just want to say to exit, like I think you're right, Dustin, in that it's a good decision to make for a game. Let's assume this guy was removed. It's good to make that decision, but I completely disagree with the idea that that's a good sign. If Ubisoft signed off on a dude that wasn't prepared to direct the game, and then gave him the keys to the franchise, and then had removed him a year into the project, that's a huge red flag. Like, directors don't leave their own projects. I would be very surprised if he left on his own volition. Doesn't sound like that comment he put on LinkedIn doesn't sound like he left on his own volition. Why would the creative director of a Ubisoft game leave? Think that's it, unless there was some other reason. I don't think it's anything sinister, which some things are going on at Ubisoft that actually are sinister, as we know from the past. I don't think it's anything like that. I look at that and I wonder who's making these decisions. Every director has to start somewhere. I know this is that guy's directorial debut, but typically speaking, when you're pushed out at the top like that, it's for a reason. You're not just going to abandon ship. Whether it's a personal reason or not, I don't know. Maybe it could be. Maybe he has some sickness or something. I don't know. But we'll keep an eye on this. We have years to wait. And finally, number 6. One of mega publisher Electronic Arts' most enduring franchises over the years has quietly but steadily been The Sims. First launched on PC in 2000, The Sims is a Will Wright created spin-off of his Sims franchise like SimCity. But instead of a higher level view of urban planning in that case, you'd get further into the weeds of domestic and town life. It is in essence the ultimate sandbox game. The 2000 PC version finally got ported to PlayStation 2 in 2003, while the 2004 sequel came to PlayStation 2 and PSP alike in 2005. The third iteration launched on PC in 2009 and PlayStation 3 in 2010, while the most recent offering, The Sims 4, came to PC in 2014 and PlayStation 4 in 2017. And while there are a ton of interstitial releases, DLC, updates, and more for all 4 of those games, that's where we currently stand with The Sims, that is, until now. Sims developer Maxis, founded by the aforementioned Will Wright and purchased outright in 1997 by EA, is creating a 5th core game, which they have codenamed Project Renee. The game was revealed at the end of a recent Sims-centric livestream conducted by EA and Maxis. Near the end of that stream, Project Renee is announced as, quote, the next generation Sims game and creative platform, reimagining the Sims you know and love with new ways to play, end quote. As described by a member of Maxis' staff, quote, we have a growing team focused on this game, working alongside the Sims 4 and mobile teams, end quote. And like Dead Space, Dragon Age, and Skate, it appears that EA is announcing this game early by intention to bring players into the dev cycle, at least ostensibly. They make it clear that the game is years away. In about 2 minutes of footage, Maxis shows off some cool design functionality as The Sims is entirely predicated on customization, and it seems like the potential audience is stoked. It's unclear when The Sims 5 will launch or if it will even be called that. However, it's most certain to come to PS5 quickly upon release. Are either of you Sims people? I've never been attracted to this franchise, I must be honest. It's always been a little bit of a turnoff to me.
Yeah, I remember a friend showing it to me, but I've never been attracted to that series at all either. So, out of my league.
I actually played a decent amount of it, to be honest. I used to play it. I think I told the story on the podcast a little bit before. Or I know I told it on some podcast. God help me. I don't even remember fucking which one. But yeah, I would end up going to school like earlier than most people because I lived outside of the range of the buses. So my parents would have to take me before work. So I'd be there like maybe like an hour early, and I would just hang out in like the computer lab and play Sims on the computer like for an hour every morning before school. So I played a decent amount of it. I liked it. I don't know if I loved it to the degree where I'd be excited about something like this, or you know, I don't know. The Sims is not one of my favorite franchises. I'll put it that way, but I do appreciate it, and I could see myself jumping into it again in some way if I'm like really like in a weird mood where I'm like I want to build a pool and put a Sim in there and take the ladder away and just watch him flail endlessly in a I have no mouth and I'm a scream type of God complex way. But I don't know. It's a very niche game for a very specific point in life, I think, and I'm just kind of past it. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. Project Renee out there, and it'll probably not come into PS5 immediately. So even when it's announced and revealed, it'll probably be PC first. Will Wright, what a G. I mean, yeah, what an amazing game designer. What was that weird one he made?
Ants
Spore
or something?
Oh, Spore.
Was that him?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was him, I think.
Oh my God.
Hey, everybody. Chris and I cutting in without
Yeah.
Father, just you and I. Now, before we talk about what's very important, which is Resident Evil news that just dropped, we were discussing if we were going to do a pickup. We were kind of waiting to see what the news was, and we decided to do a pickup. Colin said, "Can you guys do without me? It would be greatly appreciated. I'm mildly indisposed." What does this mean?
I don't know. He's probably
Now
jerking it.
Well, that's the thing, is that right before he said he was in the shower.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on here, but either way, your boys, Dustin and Chris, are here to talk about some Resident Evil news. Now, the way I organize this is that I put boring stuff and then RE4 remake. So we'll quickly touch on the boring. No, it's not really boring. It's just compared to the RE4 trailer, it is boring. So Resident Evil Village Gold Edition is coming, which is basically what they are putting all the DLC in the game, packing it up, and you can buy that if you want. But you can also buy the DLC separately. There's a demo out to check out the DLC that has the third person mode. You can play up to an hour. And so that Gold Edition, along with the DLC, comes out October 28th. Of course, that is the third person mode and the DLC. Chris, are you going to be diving into this DLC at all?
Man, I think so. Just because I don't know. I feel like I liked that game more than most people did. But I also really like third person Resident Evil. It's like my ideal way. Like I love Resident Evil 4. It's like a classic. I think it still plays really well, perfectly, to be perfectly honest. But just more Resident Evil Village in a style that I vastly prefer to first person is like an easy sell for me. So like, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be checking this out.
I like that it's epilogue DLC, because sometimes it feels like, I don't know, you don't want necessarily the DLC to feel essential to the story, but sometimes I feel like DLC can feel too like not important, like it's a side story or whatever. It's like you kind of got to toe that line. It's really interesting that, to me at least, that this takes place as like I said, like an epilogue to the story. So I'm definitely going to play that. I don't know how I feel about replaying the game in third person mode, mainly because I feel like I may say this now, but I feel like I want my next full play of that game to be in VR.
I know. I know.
Like I'd rather save it for that, No,
totally. I don't know if I'll replay it again. I don't know if I'll replay the whole game in third person mode again. Especially, I think back to the first time I was playing Resident Evil Village, and I remember very specific parts that feel like they could really only work in first person. So I am curious to at least check those out to see like how those function, because there's a very specific part that I remember like looking for. You have to look through a window. And you have to like align trees or something to form a number for like a code for like a chest.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that's a jump scare, like in Resident Evil Village, where like something's supposed to jump out at you through the window. And I wonder how effective things like little things like that are very clearly playing on the first person angle are going to be with this perspective shift. Clearly, they've put a lot of work into this, so I don't imagine it's going to be completely broken. But that is, as much as I am not going to play this game again in third person mode, at least not anytime soon, I am genuinely curious about those aspects and how they're going to function.
They were being cute about it in the stream because they made it clear that if you cannot see Ethan's face in third person mode, if you turn the camera around, he will look away from view. Which, I don't know about you, but I've never been like, man, what does Ethan Winters look like? A boring generic dude. Parent like is just what I imagine in my head. He sounds like one, but I don't know. That was just kind of a funny part. What's funny is you can already see what he looks like.
Yeah,
they've modeled his face. You can see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's not even remotely a mystery.
Right.
It's very weird.
It's strange. Okay, so the next bit that is relevant to the PlayStation audience is that Resident Evil Reverse, or as they said in the stream, RE-verse, I don't know, is coming out also on October 28th. And if you bought Village, you get this game for free, and you will get early access on October 24th. only thing I'll say about this is that the new trailer they put out, it seems, at least from my first impression, is that they really toned down that weird comic book style. Because when I saw that, when I saw it initially, I was like, oh, it's this again. And then I thought, what? Like, wasn't there some kind of weird style when we saw this a year ago that looked definitely questionable? It seems like they've toned that down. Maybe that's what they've been doing for the last year. They had to, get rid of all that the comic book style. But I don't know. I mean, Chris, we both will have access to this game as owners of Village. But is this something that you think is worth even checking out just for a romp, maybe?
I don't know, man. This looks so phenomenally unappealing to me that I don't know if I can even muster up the curiosity. I feel like I know my preference in multiplayer games well enough to know that this isn't something that's gonna, even if it's better than I'm expecting, it's not gonna last long. Like, there are games that I was way, way, way more into that I didn't play for that long. Like, I think back to the Evil Dead game, which I think is genuinely a fun time. But I'm not really playing that anymore, and this doesn't even look even half as good as that, to be quite frank. I just don't think Resident Evil has any place in this space. I don't think it's necessary. I feel like it's trying too hard to be something it's not, which is just a bad idea in every possible avenue. So I don't know.
It kind of reminds me of the tacked on multiplayer games of the 360 and PS3 generation. Just even in its concept, hopefully better in its execution, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's just one of those things that it's like the audience of this series aren't looking for a multiplayer version, which I guess there's other cases where that's worked out, but I don't know. We'll have to see. It's nice, at least for the Village owners, that they get it for free. Maybe that'll be this game's saving grace, but who knows? So there was also announcements about the cloud versions coming to the Switch. Obviously not really relevant, especially relevant if you like games that play responsively. I would recommend not checking those out on Switch. And it's also coming to the Mac, which I think is so funny. They're making such a big deal about this game coming to the Mac. It's like, okay, whatever. So anyway, to the most important thing of all, which is, of course, Resident Evil 4 Remake. We've got a nice, juicy 5-minute trailer, and we've got a release date, March 24th, which I think is about what we had kind of predicted was that Q1 2023 area. And there's like a special edition and stuff like that. But enough of that. Chris, first impressions of this glorious 5 minutes.
Oh, dude, looks so good. It looks... I was initially concerned when I first heard that they were remaking this game, because I really do... I love Resident Evil 4. I think it's... If Dead Space didn't exist, I think it would be kind of the absolute best, third-person over-the-shoulder action horror game. And this looks like it could potentially be better. And so it's very weird. Like, I'm very attached to the look of the original. And one of my main concerns still, even when we saw it again a couple months back, was like, oh man, it does look better, but I'm like worried that they might fuck with it too much, or they might miss out on the tone. Or my main concern was actually that they were going to make it less absurd, or they were going to try and make it a little bit more like grounded. But no, Leon's still kicking. He's still jumping out of a window and landing on his knees as if it's totally possible. And it looks fantastic. It looks great. There's like new stuff in here that doesn't look familiar to me, but it still doesn't look out of place. Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous.
Oh man, it looks so good.
Yeah, like I'm stoked on this.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is really neat. And I think this was a good idea from their perspective, is that this trailer primarily represents the very beginning of the game, which I feel like is kind of solidified in a lot of people's minds. Even if you've never fully played the game, a lot of people have at least played the beginning of this. And I think it's interesting just in that. So I haven't mentioned this on the show, and I didn't bring it up in what you've been playing, because I'm want to talk about it more thoroughly later. I've been lightly replaying Resident Evil 4 on Steam Deck the past couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, obviously this beginning part is very different, where Leon, instead of just going in and seeing this villager and getting attacked, seems much more build up. He goes into the basement. There's all kinds of weird, creepy shit all over the place. It's clear that it is a remake through and through. They are adding stuff to it. But from what we've seen of that section, it's like it made sense. Like it's adding to the story, not trying to change it, building up the suspense more, building up the atmosphere. I was a little concerned initially when he's in the basement and there's the guy that he has like his head on crooked. Mm-hmm. I was like, are they just going to make the villagers zombies now or like weird and fucked up? But it seems like it was just that one guy.
Yeah.
So what did you think overall? I feel like this whole the action sequence was just crazy. That it's Resident Evil 4. It's so it comes from that mid era of Resident Evil where you could not move and shoot at the same time, and then eventually they kind of changed that and reworked that a bit for the new remakes. And so I feel like they were able to still manage that. Like, I don't know, like there's something about this gameplay here that just looks so intense, where like Leon's running on the roofs of places, then he's kicking a dude, and the guy with the chainsaw is coming after him. Something about it all felt right.
Yeah. It feels like, well, I'll speak to what you said before, but like I think that it can be really tricky making any changes to a game as important and as seminal as Resident Evil 4 is. It can be very, very, it's a very risky thing to do. Even if you think you're doing a good job, even if you think you're building suspense, or maybe you're adding more to contribute more to a feeling that wasn't fully lived up to in the original, a lot of people still have a preference for that original. So it can be very dangerous to even change even one iota of anything when you're dealing with a remake of a very, very beloved title, and one that is as important as Resident Evil 4 is. But like you said in the beginning of the beginning basement section, I was like, oh, this doesn't, like, it didn't feel out of place to me. Like, it felt like, oh, it's still doing what the original did. It's just building up to it in a more modern way, and it's not betraying the original. It's not change for change's sake, which I do appreciate. And that action scene was dope. When he shot the light.
Oh yeah,
and it set the cow on fire and shit like that. I was like, oh, sick. Any kind of additive element like that to give the world a little bit more interactivity, I'm all for. But yeah, him jumping off the roofs and just doing that spin kick, it looked really, because I remember I've played the original Resident Evil 4 kind of recently. And I remember that first section in the town. It's like it's tense, but you can get away pretty easily, and you can kind of like think a little bit about like how you're going, because you know they're following you, but they're going slow. And this one, it seems like it's really easy to be overwhelmed, and they can like climb out after you, and it's really cool what they managed to pull off with this. I'm so excited. I was already excited for this just because, you know, it's a really amazing game as a baseline. But as if I needed to be sold any further, this definitely, you know, this has my attention. Full stop.
I like that when the cow caught on fire, he said, what did he say? He's like, oh, you can bill me later. Which I was wondering if the trailer would have any kind of cheesy line in it. And I was thinking specifically at the end of that sequence is when the title comes up and he's like, where'd everybody go? Bingo. Which is just amazing, like an iconic line. They better have it in the game.
Yeah. It would, man, it would be a shame if like I mean, you could bill me later is a pretty good indication that they're not afraid of that kind of thing. But yeah. I do hope that the stuff that was there originally is still there as much as it can be, because that's such a ridiculous fucking, where'd everybody go? Bingo.
There's another short trailer that they put out that kind of shows other parts of the game as well that all look really good. It shows Ashley. It shows the first, that big boss creature. I can't remember his name. He looks like a big troll guy from Lord of the Rings. Oh
yeah, in that little arena or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it shows that.
I don't remember his name either.
It shows. I haven't gotten to this part, and it's been so long since I've played it. The little like Napoleon looking dude.
Salazar.
Salazar, that's it. I was like, I couldn't remember his name. It shows him in it, which looks really cool. Overall, like at this point, I don't need to see anything else from this game. And luckily, it's not too far away in March. But Chris, any closing thoughts that we didn't touch on or anything you want to say before we cut back to the regular show?
No, man, I'm so excited to play this. And I'm very much with you. I don't need to see really anything left. I already know that the original's so good. And what they're adding here to the early parts of the game already kind of have me sold. So I feel like it would be a lot better to just kind of be as blind about this as possible.
Definitely.
But yeah, no, it looks amazing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's it for this Resident Evil cutout or pickup or whatever from Chris and I. You will hear Colin's full thoughts next week. Hopefully he'll be done with whatever he is indisposed of, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that you can get Colin's full thoughts on these trailers as well. But we wanted to make sure we got this in on this week for you guys. So back to the show.
Let's get into listener inquiries. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to end our show as we do each and every week from Patreon. Just random things you guys like to talk about. We'll start with Brandon Lowe. He says, "Hey, you little slits. First time ever writing into a podcast, so be gentle on me. My question is, how do you guys feel about cliffhangers in the video game space? I understand why they exist, just like in movies, but with dev cycles taking 5+ years, shouldn't they wrap up every game with a satisfying conclusion? Then if it hits big, worry about a sequel later. Waiting a decade for Kingdom Hearts 3, then they didn't even wrap up Sora and Kairi's, I don't know what the fuck that is. Kairi. Story will forever piss me off. Dustin, speak to it. Kingdom Hearts 3.
I'm trying to remember how Kingdom Hearts 2 ended, because I remember feeling like that one, it was less of a cliffhanger than the first one. But to me, I don't know. Ending on a cliffhanger, I think, can sometimes be annoying depending on the nature of the cliffhanger. But I think it's also important to leave your audience wanting more and wanting to see what's next. It's that there's this idea of the mystery can sometimes be as exciting as what actually happens. Obviously, this can backfire if your game does take 10 years or whatever to actually come out, but I don't really have a problem with it. I think that it can be egregious, though, where the moment you don't know whether, like, if someone lives or dies or something like that, like, you know, a gunshot or something, can be maybe a little too much. But overall, I have no problem with a good cliffhanger, something to speculate about.
Yeah, I feel this way generally in a lot of stuff. I feel like it's cool to wrap things up, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having persistent mystery. Yeah. And I also think there's nothing wrong with necessarily opening threads that you never answer. It always reminds me of, you know, one of my favorite shows is Mad Men, as everyone I think knows because I bring it up all the time. I absolutely love that show. I think it's just an absolute masterpiece. And one of the things they did was, I think maybe after the last season, they tweeted out a picture of all of these different hanging plot lines that they wrote leading into the final season. Like, here's like 25 things that we actually haven't wrapped up. We have to select like 4 of them. And you realize all of the things that they never get back to or never resolve. I don't think it makes the storytelling any worse. It simply indicates that you don't know, as the observer of the story, what actually happened. So you're not privy to, or even it's necessary to ever deliver that information to you, because you wouldn't necessarily know that as the reader or viewer or whatever player. And so I like games like Horizon, I think, is a really good example. And I'm not going to spoil Forbidden West in any meaningful way here. I'll just say that it ends on a massive cliffhanger. And I think that that's awesome because it suggests a third game is coming. I think it's obvious that it is, but it also resolves itself kind of peacefully while setting things up. Might be a weird example because it's the second of a 3-game trilogy, but maybe God of War 2018 is another example. Like, that was pretty satisfied. I was pretty satisfied with that. So you can do both. I think sometimes what ends up happening with cliffhangers is not so much the literal nature of like a cliffhanger at the end, but how something is teased and you get a little taste of it later on. Like, again, not spoiling Uncharted 3, but what happens in the early chapters of Uncharted 3 is itself a massive cliffhanger from earlier games that you get to experience for the first time from that perspective. And it fulfills something that wasn't necessary, but gave you more of the story. So I in other words, I just think that it's up to the writers to have the agency over what to tell you. And I really have no problem with writing things in such a way. I was like, well, there's more. It's like, well, of course there is. There's always more in life. So Do you have anything you want to add, Chris?
I'm a little conflicted because I do like I like a good cliffhanger. I think there's ways to do it in such a way that you can resolve the primary story and then still have mystery kind of there, and like maybe leave it open for future. I think Halo 3 did a great job actually, because that wrapped up everything, but there was still that legendary ending tease where it was like, ooh, he's in space and he's floating and there's a planet. Where's that? And it's not really important to what has happened so far, but it leaves the door open for future stuff. I think that's a really ideal way to do it. I will say, I feel like it bothers me a lot more now than it used to, because back in the day, I feel like when you had a cliffhanger, it was leading somewhere, and then when it led somewhere, it would resolve. Whereas now I feel like there's like a economic incentive to keep things going or keep things alive for as long as possible. And so cliffhangers tend to lead into other cliffhangers, tend to lead into other cliffhangers, tend to lead into other cliffhangers. And that's kind of like, that's annoying at that point. Because I did feel like a while ago, I think even just 2000 to 2013, I feel like there was a good period of time where we would get like trilogies of games and they would resolve. And so if the second game or the first game ended in a cliffhanger, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because you knew that sometime soon you were going to experience the end of that. Whereas now it feels like, because we're in live service territory where there's like narrative kind of thrown into live service, and even just like other games that are like narrative focused, but also kind of want to keep content pumping out, it never feels like there's a proper resolution. I almost feel like that's kind of the situation with Marvel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, where it's like they already had their ending. Like Endgame was that, like they wrapped everything up, and so now every movie ends with a cliffhanger, but it doesn't feel like it's building towards anything specific. It just sort of feels like fucking scattershot and random. And even if there is a plan in place for it to pay off later, it doesn't feel like it means anything because it's already been resolved. It's just, I don't know. I think you have to be careful with cliffhangers, and you have to use them sparingly and judiciously and carefully. And I don't think you can keep individual threads lasting or individual threads going for too long, or at least in the process of, or in the context of making it seem like you're going to answer them and then just kind of taking fucking forever to get to it. But I do think there is also a danger in just explaining too much. I don't know. It's tricky. It's a really difficult thing to balance, and it's why good stories stand the test of time, because it's not fucking easy to do.
Certainly isn't. Well said. Stephen Lucy wrote in and said, "Dear Colin and the Slitty Twisters, longtime listener, first time writer. I have to address the conversation about the cost of video games. I'm 40 and remember $100 cartridge-based games. It's never brought up that modern games have largely eschewed physical releases and are delivered digitally at a significantly lower cost to publishers. Additionally, there are so many ways to monetize games beyond selling the base package, so much so that many of the largest games in the world have zero cost entry. I feel like Colin would have been on the Suncoast Video Sam Goody's Blockbuster side of history with other media types. Subscriptions are clearly the future, and it's futile to resist. A $70 remaster of a 10-year-old game, come off it. That's why I have Gamefly. Good day, sirs." Thank you, Stephen, for writing in. So, whether or not subscriptions are the future or not is neither here nor there. I just have to check this math because I think that there's like some preconceptions. A game back in the day, let's say in the SNES era, like Final Fantasy IV, Dagan and I bring this up sometimes. Final Fantasy IV was made by like 15 people in maybe like a year. I mean, that's insane when you think about it, but it's true. And the way you made games were different. It wasn't less hard or anything. It was different. And the teams were smaller. They were more nimble. Like the Mega Man series, my beloved Mega Man series, each of those games was made in well under a year. And with a team of like no one. There's like no one on these teams. A few people. And I just think people don't understand that a game back then would sell 500,000 copies or 1 million copies, be a massive success. It didn't cost that much to make. The physical manufacturer, as you say, Stephen, is what drove up the cost of cartridges. But with the removal of cartridges and the proliferation of games digitally, it doesn't bring down the actual core cost of making the game, because no longer are teams making Final Fantasy IV with 15 people in a year for probably a cost of a few $1 million. When Final Fantasy VII entered development in 1994, 1995, it cost $40 million and had like 100 plus people working on it, which at the time was unheard of. No one had ever even seen a production like that. And that kind of proliferation, millions of copies sold, makes you more money when you sell more for games, but don't undercount how much it costs to just make the game. That's what you don't ever bring up in your diatribe here, is you talk about how much cartridge-based games talk. I'm 38. I remember those days too. And you say the cost of publishers is much lower, and that's true from a physical standpoint, but you don't ever talk about the games. Were we playing The Last of Us in 1990? That was an inconceivable game to even imagine could exist. The most beautiful games we had at that time were something like Dragon's Lair, which was not even a game. To be beautiful, it couldn't be. And so I just think that there's like some weird insistence that we deserve the lowest possible cost margins for games, that we should get them like it's some sort of content product, like it's Netflix. Okay, if that's what you want, then that's what we're going to get. But I don't know if you're going to like it. That's what I'm saying. And I'm very happy to pay $60 or $70 for a la carte games. That's perfectly fine with me. How many games I paid $40 for Trails of Cold Steel on PS4. I'm going to play it for probably 70 hours. It's cheaper than going to a movie. It's cheaper than going out to eat. It's cheaper per hour watch than my cable package. I just feel like, what are we trying to extract out of this? You say, Steven, you say something like, I feel like Colin would have been on the Suncoast video, blah, blah, blah. Subscriptions are clearly the future and it's futile to exist. And you brag about how there's so many ways to monetize games that it's brought it to zero cost entry. Don't you realize that means the destruction of video games? The zero cost entry, the race to the bottom, is the reason we are here. And you're celebrating it. So more power to you. God bless you, Steven. Thank you for writing in. But I don't know that we necessarily are like, I necessarily need to take into account these different things when you're not taking in, you're treating a video game like it's a tchotchke made in a factory. And they compare a $100 cartridge-based game to a $60 package game. We're making fun of something like Arkham Knights, or Gotham Knights, which is way more sophisticated than anything from that era, right? So why should that game be cheaper? It doesn't make any sense. I'm going on a diatribe. I'm sorry. Does anyone have anything to add?
I think the only thing I would want to add is just that pray that they don't alter the deal further as far as the price. Yeah. Think about how just thinking about even my own grocery bill over the past year, seeing that skyrocket.
It fucking sucks
with inflation.
I can't believe it.
You know?
Oh, it sucks.
I just did a quick inflation calculator. Let's say 2006, which games were what? That would have been right around the birth of the 360.
Yeah, so
$60.
Yeah, so $50 or $60.
Same item would cost $88.34. So I'll repeat what I said. Pray they don't alter the deal further if $70 bothers you that much.
Yeah, like I said it. I paid $80 for Final Fantasy III, which is 6, in 1994, the fall of 1994,
let's
in Toys R
that
Us.
In.
That's like $140 today, something like that. $135.
1994, $80. Calculate $160.
Oh, some more. I mean, that's horrifying, dude. That's 100% inflation. In 30 years, 100% inflation. And we're sitting here talking about video games like they're rolling off a factory, like they're donuts coming off a goddamn conveyor belt. I just don't get it. I don't know. I don't get it. Why are we treating games as commodities? That's what subscription models do. I don't know. If you're into it, then more power to you, but I'm not. Josh W. wrote in and said, hey, my whispering slitters. Do you think there would be or ever be a future where Sony would consider running a Kickstarter to revive or reboot some of their dormant IPs? I backed the Arm Fantasia Kickstarter. I did too. And it got me thinking about the slew of games I would kill from Sony. I know the optics would look terrible for them, but this would be a surefire way for Sony to take the safe approach and ensure that development costs are accounted for, and any additional sales are icing on the cake. I would spend an unhealthy amount if it meant that it would bring back Resistance in native fashion to PS5. There is this interesting notion of pre-ordering to force something's manufacture. So and Kickstarter obviously is this, but I'm a big G.I. Joe guy, as people know, and G.I. Joe has their own proprietary, or Hasbro has their own proprietary HasLab Kickstarter thing. And they make millions and millions of dollars on there. Just being like, here's a concept of a fucking G.I. Joe plane. We'll make it. If it raises this much money, it raises all the money it needs, and then they make it. I just don't know that it's savory for a company like Sony that makes hundreds of millions of dollars every quarter in profit, going around and saying like, well, put your money up front from the very beginning. I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was in 2015 at PSX when I think it was, or E3 when Shenmue 3 was on stage.
Shenmue, yeah.
And they like promoted the Kickstarter. And I remember at the time being like, that's fucking nuts. Sony can't afford to give Shenmue $6 million or something like that. It's just, it's like, that's so embarrassing. You shouldn't admit that. It's nothing to you. If the game is not going to do well enough that you don't want to put that much money on it, why are you trying to get your audience to pay for it up front?
Yeah.
And so that would be my big problem. I don't know. It maybe can work. I think it would be cool to have some sort of thing where there is voting and maybe people do put money down, their credit card down and pre-order things, and they're bound to make that. I don't hate that idea. I just don't know how it would really work. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that Shenmue thing was wildly funny when I when I was watching that showcase. I don't think this is a good idea. I understand the idea behind maybe gauging interest and by the way, gauging real interest, not like a Twitter poll.
Totally. Anyone can say anything. That's why I'm saying like put your money down.
Yeah, put your money down. I understand the value in that, but at the same time, you can't be Sony and do that. Like you can't, because let's say you do like 3 of these and all of them fail. Then that's just embarrassing because it kind of implies that you don't know what your audience wants. It implies that I don't know, there's just something about it that feels really unbecoming of a company that's that big. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, yeah, Sony's not as big as Microsoft or whatever, but I still think they're definitely big enough for a Kickstarter to come across as like really fucking weird. And I think that was the case with Shenmue. That did not come across well from Sony's at least from my perspective as a characterization of Sony at all. Like that looked really weird to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that looked weird to most people because like what was the original amount that they were trying to raise?
Let me look. It was something very modest.
It was something that they should have been able to just like do themselves.
Yeah, find private funding. I totally agree. They only got 6.3 million. And that's what I don't see what they were asking. So, I mean, that's nothing.
That is,
I mean, it's a lot of money to pay. But.
It's a lot of money for an individual or even just a handful of people. But like for a full-fledged development team, that is astoundingly little. So, no, I don't know. I just think there's a lot more risks with this than there are benefits. Like, sure, you could maybe get the audience to fund a risk-free Resistance game. But is that really worth begging on the corner as the owner of PlayStation, the creator of PlayStation? Is it good for you to beg on the corner to make Resistance, the game that you are choosing to just not make yourself for no reason? I don't know, man. It doesn't sit well with me, and I don't think it would sit well with most people observing. I think it's an optics game at that point, and I just don't know if it'll. I don't know if they can afford that kind of thing right now, or at all, generally.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dustin. Do you have something to say?
Well, no, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Take it.
So the thing for me about this, I mean, Kickstarter is already a risk for you as the consumer, right? You don't know if the game, first of all, is even going to come out, but more importantly, I think, is if it will be any good, right? And so, like, I think about Yooka-Laylee was a game that was kickstarted, people were really, really excited for, and then when it came out, it wasn't horrible, but it was also not as good as people wanted it to be. And so it's almost like the thought of Sony doing something like this is like a worse version of a pre-order, where it's like, okay, you're going to give us the money and the incentive for us to make a great game is kind of gone because fuck you, you already paid for it. Like, I don't know. We want companies. I understand that this could seem like a motivator to get some of your favorite things back, but we want companies vying for our money as hard as they possibly can. We don't want to be giving it to them blindly as much as we can.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you believe that's why it's so funny they for this Wild Arms Armed Fantasia kind of remake or reimagining that they've kickstarted without Sony. I just look at that and I'm like, you can't afford to give them $10 million or something. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you're spending your money where you can't make that work. That to me is confusing, but I think it goes back to the state. They're not interested. I used to say this a lot and it's kind of coming back to haunt me a little bit, but I think generally speaking, they're not interested in nickels and dimes. Like they don't want to fund a $10 million game and make $10 million. They just don't care. And I just think that that's a shame. I don't think you have to flood the market with those kinds of games, but I think the absence of even smaller second and first party games after 2019 has been very conspicuous. So after Medieval came out and that paint game, whatever the fuck that game was called, what was that game called? You know what I'm talking about? The game where you were the kid and you would...
Oh my God.
Concrete Genie.
Concrete Genie, right. And one of those games, those were like the last ones of their kind. But we used to actually get quite a few of those. And I just don't think that they were doing the right ones. Bound and all those random games. Like you're not, Doki Doki Universes. You're not choosing the right ones, but it doesn't mean that you can't make those kinds of like A-level games or more large indie games, niche role-playing games, etc. exist. And that was the greatest thing about PlayStation back in the day, especially PS1 and PS2.
No, especially PS1. PS1 was almost awesome. Entirely that.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I don't know. I long for that as well, but I don't think Sony, I agree. It would be a weird optics thing, but they should be smart enough to be able to believe in Resistance without us having to tell them. Like, do they really believe that if they went back into Resistance that game wouldn't sell millions of copies? If they made, Sony is a big deal. PlayStation's a big deal. Whatever they announce will be a big deal if they make it a big deal and it's quality. So if they come back and they say, here's $100 million Resistance game, everyone's going to be really excited about it. If it looks and ultimately plays like $100 million Resistance game, you don't need to go and kickstart it. So we'll see what happens. They are in desperate need of both a single player and multiplayer shooter. Hopefully both from different games, ideally. That's why I think bringing some of this stuff back will make a lot of sense, but we'll see. Raji Bazu wrote in and said, hi, Colin. A few episodes ago, you mentioned you had E3 stories about Kensha Hall, but don't recall you sharing any. Care to reveal any gems? If I may share my own, I thoroughly enjoyed the 2001 E3 I attended in high school under false pretenses. Since it was industry only, then I got tickets from a friend at Blizzard, created a fake company called Monkey Studios, and made myself VP. One person asked me what the studio did, to which I replied, computer stuff, grabbed their swag, and quickly walked away. Good times. E3 2001, my first E3 was 2004. Those were the good days, man, like when it was crazy. But Kensha Hall, so it's Kentia, you guys can go look it up if you want, was this kind of offshoot of the main two halls at E3, and it went away. It exists. It's like a place in the LA Convention Center. But during E3, it's where all of the weird shit would go. And so you would see like porn games, peripheral, like weird PC shit, the really off the wall indie stuff before indie gaming was really a thing, like the strange third parties that would sell 50,000 copies of their game on PS2 and GameCube or something. That was the kind of stuff that was going on in Kensha Hall. And there was really nothing specifically notable about it, except for it was the antithesis of what you would find. And I think the North Hall, what was it? North Hall or South Hall and West Hall, I think were the two big ones at E3 and LACC. So you would just kind of go there. And that was where all the people were that couldn't afford to be anywhere near those spaces, where it was the cost per square foot was enormous. Here you can get like a little booth and do whatever you want and have your weird fucking hentai game. And that was when E3 was fun. I mean, it was industry only, which I think E3 should be. It's not Comic-Con. And I think that's kind of what made it lose its luster, was E3 started losing interest from media because those media started going to Comic-Con and PAX and all these places and getting a lot of that information there. And then as a way to save E3 was like, well, we should open ourselves to the public. And at that point, I think E3 broke, and Kensha Hall was that kind of weird shit where people were desperate for PR, like for anyone to write about their shit. It's a very interesting time in the industry when it was not as easy to get things out. When you think about, I always bring this up, but there are 716 Nintendo games, NES games. That's it. So like every dollar made on NES was through all 716 of those games, 2 hardware refreshes and all the accessories, and that's it. But as gaming got bigger and bigger, started coming from more and more places. That it's the kind of place where you would see a VR headset in 2010, and it would be like a really crude headset, and you would have some sort of floor that moved with you that you would walk on, like a treadmill. Like that's the kind of shit that would be there. like stuff that was made in people's garages where they were really swinging for the fences, trying to get someone's attention, because that was what E3 was all about, was making those professional connections, showing off your products, interviewing people, making deals, you know? So that's Kensho Hall. I do realize I forgot to talk about that, and a lot of people did write about that. So thank you, Rajiv, for writing in. Devlin England wrote in and said, "Hey, Slit Lords, there has been a lot of talk recently about video game length. Well, I, for one, think the opinion of many video games being too long is primarily the opinion of reviewers who need to play many games throughout the year by some sort of deadline. I will agree that some games are filled with bloat just to keep you there. With the recent news of Callisto Protocol being 10 to 12 hours, this game for me has gone from a day one game to something I will buy on sale. 2 to 3 sittings of a game time isn't worth $70 to me. What do you think? Is 10 to 12 hours good, or would you have liked a little longer? What is the sweet spot for single player narrative games like this?" I don't know. That sounds good to me. I know people's value propositions are different, but 10 to 12 hours, so that's probably going to be more. That could be dev math where it's really 8 hours, but I play games slow, so I would probably think I'm going to play more like 14 hours, but we'll see. Studios aren't as apt to lie about game time anymore like they used to be. They used to lie about how long games were all the time. Like some totally mentally deficient person was playing and they're like, yeah, that's how long it's going to take. So, Chris, I got to go to you. This is something, a drum we beat a lot. I do think some of it has to do with the media and its preference towards shorter games that are more digestible, and that sets some sort of cadence. But I also think that people underestimate how much other people value their time. And if Callisto Protocol only needs to stick around for 10 to 12 hours and that's what it demands, then that's what it demands. I think that that's $70 well spent if it's good. And so that doesn't put me off at all. I wonder how you feel.
No, I'm excited. I love that. I love that it's 10 to 12 hours. That is such a nice amount of time for a game for me. I don't know. Like, there's certain games that I think are better because they are longer. There are certain games that are better because they're shorter. There are certain games that just are way too long. It's a sweet spot, but I don't think it's the same for every game. Like, I think like 10 to 12 hours for a game like Callisto Protocol sounds perfect to me, but like I think about a game like Stray, and if I had to play Stray for 10 to 12 hours, I'd be like, oh my God, this is way too long for what this game is. Stray was a very short game. I think I beat it in like maybe 4 or 5 hours max. It didn't take me a long time. And I really enjoyed it because it didn't overstay its welcome. It showed me everything that it needed to. It wasn't bloated. It respected my time. And yeah, maybe that is something that's just purely for the games industry people who have to get through certain things in a very specific amount of time. But I just think as a person in just the modern world, like, your time is incredibly valuable, and it's also incredibly wasted often by a lot of bullshit, especially social media that's like just incredibly just like has this way of like rooting into your brain and like hooking you and just sapping your productivity. Just I like something that can engage me thoroughly that doesn't overstay its welcome. I think there's so much value in that. And yeah, I would pay $70 for that. I'd pay $100 for a game that was $5 if it was or that was 5 hours if it was a damn good game. You know, like I really don't think time equates to value for me. I like shorter games. It means I can get through more of them. It means that I'm less likely to fall off because the game gives me fewer opportunities to fall off, which I have a tendency of doing. You know, like I'm pretty fickle with games. Like if a game isn't holding my attention the whole time, I'm very much liable to just put it down because there are other games that can. And there are other games that are very, very long that can, by the way. Red Dead Redemption 2 kept my attention the entire time. And that is a long fucking game. That's a crazy long game. That is one of the longest games that I personally have gone through. Death Stranding was another one where that kept my attention the whole way through. So it's not necessarily about, you know, oh, long games are bad. It's about, or you know, short games are not worth your time. It's just a matter of quality per, I guess, like Square Enix isn't exactly what I'm thinking of, but quality per minute, you know. And there's a certain minute for some games that just like flatlines. And for me, I can't do it. It's not even because it's objectively bad. Sometimes it's just like, it's just not to my taste and I just can't do it. But I don't know. I think the conversation about hours to value is a very silly one. Generally.
Yeah, I do too. I hate it. It's reductive. And I also think it reduces sheer gameplay. Like, people look at a game like Fallout 3, for instance. It's like, well, this game is huge. And I love Fallout 3. It's awesome. But how much of it are you actually playing? You're walking around, you're in menus, you're customizing and crafting things. It's all good. But when you're talking about gunplay or gameplay, actually doing something, are you doing things for much more than 10 or 12 hours in a really intensive way? So when I think about that through that lens and I look at Callisto Protocol, I look at it, I'm like, this is just a kinetic 10 to 12 hours of exploration. I mean, that's what it is. And when you look at it, it's almost like Dead Space is a good example. I think Dead Space takes place over half a day or something like that. So how much longer could it be? If you're almost experiencing it in real time, which is kind of cool. So that also, I think, plays into these horror games where you don't want them to last too long. Like, we're going to play a horror game like Callisto Protocol for 40 hours. I mean, how scary can that possibly be if you survive for 40 hours and you could just dick around?
Yeah.
There should be some sort of intensity. So that's where I'm at. Anyway, Dustin, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that there are two extremes to this. There's the obsessive about it being too long and wanting, or people thinking that games are too long, and that, or people that want games to be super long and get the most value out of it. In this situation, I think that it is fair to say, like, everyone has their own economic situation with games, and they're thinking about it. Okay, I can buy one game over the next 2 months, and I need to pick something that is going to last me throughout that time, or something like that, you know? So the option could be to buy a game that's 10 or 12 hours and then play it multiple times, or maybe you could play a game that has gone down in price slightly like that or something. So I can understand the idea of like, well, if this is my budget and this game will eventually be cheaper. I like buying games new is honestly, from an economic standpoint, kind of stupid, because all games eventually go down in price. So I could understand trying to be strategic about what games you buy new if you're in a limited situation like this. So, but at the same time, I completely agree with what you guys say as far as like, I'm sure that it could be worth $70 for a really solid 10 to 12 hours. Definitely. But just because it's worth that doesn't mean it's going to be within everyone's budget. And so it may be smarter, if those are your constraints, to wait a little bit.
Yeah. I just think for horror stuff, especially, like, I think the shorter the better for horror stuff. Like, I just don't think horror is an emotion that you can sustain for long periods of time. It's not like an adventure or like a comedy or anything else. It's like very uniquely brief, because you eventually just build up a tolerance for what the game is trying to freak you out with. It's a very different feeling. It's why some of the best horror movies are some of the shortest. Like, I don't think there's a single horror movie that's like as long as Lord of the Rings, or not any that are particularly good. You know, it's always the ones that are like, oh, that was bloated, or that's too long, or whatever. My favorite horror movie ever, Evil Dead 2, is 1 hour and 25 minutes. And it is paced perfectly. It doesn't need to be any longer than that. And if it was, it would be too much. And I think we have to examine the genres as well when we're having this conversation. Because, yeah, a really long... If you had like maybe a 5-hour RPG, that sucks, you know, generally speaking, because an RPG is supposed to really envelop you for a pretty long period of time. But dude, if I had to play an 80-hour horror game,
it just isn't a horror game at that point.
You couldn't pay me. It would be a horror game in the sense that it's horrifying that I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that's, I mean, if you're going for some meta commentary, I guess that could be cool. But I don't know, man. I just think it has a lot to do with genre as well. That's another facet of the conversation too.
All right. The final question comes from Led Bundy, who says, "Dear gentlemen, I am 34 years old and missed out on the whole arcade experience when I was a kid in the 90s because my parents were too busy getting divorced. I had an SNES at home, but I was never really exposed to beat 'em ups and ultimately never gave them a chance because they always seemed too button mashy. Fast forward to 2022, and I have now played through the TMNT Shredder's Revenge and thought it was spectacular. I'm even working my way through the Cowabunga collection now and absolutely loving it. I only wish I could go back in time to when arcades were still thriving and experience beat 'em ups as they were truly meant to be played, with smelly strangers on a huge arcade cabinet that drains my savings. Maybe it was the kid. Maybe your opponent would be the guy with the smelly hands that wears gloves when he plays DualSense. My question to you guys is: are there any genres or experiences you missed out on until way later in life? What caused you to miss out? What did you think about it when you finally tried it? I wanted to focus a little bit on arcades, but we can talk about any genres specifically. The arcade is missed, but there is something inherently predatory about those games. I mean, they want to gobble up your quarters. It's hard for me to know. Like, it's not hard for me to know. It's cheaper to play the games in the arcade, but you have to go to them than buying the port, for instance, of TMNT on NES, which was TMNT 2 on NES. That port obviously was going to cost you $50 or $60 in the store, but then you could play it over and over and over again. But there was something interesting about arcade gaming, like putting your quarter up, playing people you never played against. You didn't know anyone's skill level in the different fighting games. I really think about playing fighting games in that stuff. I used to play fighting games in arcades. I loved it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I do miss that. But as far as the genres I miss, I always say that I just got into shooters really late. And what I really think is interesting about that is it's all about how you played a game. I grew up with a gamepad with face buttons and a D-pad. So that lent us to a certain kind of game. Some people grew up with PCs with keyboards and then later mice, where that lends to a different kind of game. And then at some point they crossed over. Like those games were happening and I didn't know. Commander Keen is a good example. Like I didn't know that game even existed when I was a kid. And I didn't know anything like that was really even there. And I remember buying PC control pads when I was a kid, like on my Vio in 1996, 1997. They were just awful. And you wanted to play like control with a real controller on PC and you couldn't. So you kind of went towards the hardware that was most familiar to you, and that isolated you from a bunch of different things. That's why I always say I never really played an open world role-playing game the way we understand them until Fallout 3. I mean, that was the first time I ever did it. I never played a first-person shooter outside of Doom until Medal of Honor. So that's 1999. So, you know, you come to things late, but any recollections there, Chris?
Oh, man, I think about RPGs. I got into RPGs very, 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 very late because I was always a platformer or like a beat 'em up fighting game kind of person. I liked the immediate quickness of, you know, jumping into a match of something, getting out, and that was it. Like the more narrative driven, like kind of stat bolstering experience was just something that I just was not equipped to handle. I dabbled a little bit with like Fable 2 and stuff. I really loved Fable 2, but not necessarily because it was an RPG. I loved it for everything else. Like, I really like the soundtrack of this game. I really like the story and the vibe and the overall presentation. But I would say like the first time I really played an RPG really as it was intended was probably Skyrim. So it was even later. It was probably like 2011. I remember in college and it was purely because everybody wouldn't shut up about it. It was like everybody was like, "Oh man, Skyrim's amazing." I would be in college. I would be like in the cafeteria, like waiting for class to begin or whatever, or in the lounge, and people would just be talking about like, "Oh, did you get this thing?" It's like, "Did you get the Wabbajack or whatever?" And like, what the fuck what are you talking about? Please, dude, like I don't. It was such a domineering. It was Skyrim for people who don't remember that was a phenomenon. Like it's really difficult to describe because it was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. Even if you weren't in the games media space, if you just had a passing interest in video games, you knew what Skyrim was. Like my girlfriend knew what Skyrim was. My girlfriend's parents knew what Skyrim was. My parents knew what Skyrim was. It was just unavoidable. So I jumped into it and I was like, oh my God, I get it. This entire genre finally clicks with me. Because I remember playing Fallout 3 and I hated it. Because I was stuck in it. Because especially when you're in school, when you're playing Fallout 3, the first hour of that game is you're just in these linear hallways and you're in school. And I just remember like, oh my God, why would anybody play this? And it wasn't until Skyrim that it clicked, and I went back to New Vegas or I went back to Fallout 3 and I played New Vegas and all these other RPGs that I'd been missing out on. Another one was just general, like longer kind of narrative games like Red Dead Redemption. I would have never played a long time ago because it would have sapped too much of my patience. But as far as arcades, man, I got good news for you. They're still around and they're kind of popping, to be honest with you. They're just in a very different format in the form of barcades now, which I really, really, I love barcade. There's one in LA that I like a lot called 82 that I go to every now and again. They got a great Miss Pac-Man machine that like, it's just like, oh man, I love Miss Pac-Man.
Oh yeah, Miss Pac-Man is a jam, dude.
But you can have that. They have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game there. And they have an X-Men beat 'em up there too as well, that where you play with strangers. I was doing this like a week ago. I was like Cyclops and some random person was Nightcrawler, and it was just like random people like jumping onto this X-Men cabinet and just having a blast. And that experience is very much alive, albeit with a little bit more booze.
Yeah, they got to make their money somewhere.
They got to make their money somewhere. But it's you know, that experience is there for you, and it's still as enjoyable as it was before. I just wish I could find a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet, because that's the one I would never. I'd probably move next to it if I could. If I could. I love that game so much, but that experience is still there for you, man.
Dustin, do you have anything you want to add?
I think also, just to add to Chris's arcade comment, is that there's also free play arcades out there where you pay a flat fee to get in, and then everything's on free play.
That's cool.
For example, just at Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, they had a free play arcade there. And there's also some in the Pittsburgh area. One really good one is called Pinball PA, which you just pay once to get in. You play anything for as long as you want. But Holly and I got to play Sunset Riders, and we played the whole game. Yeah. Game's fucking awesome. And we got to play and beat it, like the whole game. It was great. See the credits at the end, and there was no anxiety about like spending so much. It's putting in so many quarters to play one game or whatever.
That was the shooter, right? Like the light gun shooter where you what is
it's like a side scroller.
Oh, right. But it is Konami, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm mixing up two things. Go on. I'm sorry.
I once played through all of the Star Wars arcade game because I always wanted to play the fight at the end with Darth Vader, which you would see when no one was playing the game. It would show you different gameplay, and that was something I always wanted to do. So I highly recommend that. And then as far as like genres that I feel like I missed out on, I feel like early JRPGs for sure, just because I was not quite old enough in a lot of cases. So that's part of the reason why I feel like I'm paying my dues this past year, just going back and checking out some of these games that are just totally essential to the genre. And it's been great. A lot of these games really hold up still. So it would be nice if some platform holders would do a better job at making those available outside of spending hundreds of dollars on original copies, which you could emulate it. Of course, people love to remind anybody. What is it about emulation? People feel like they got to evangelize, be like, oh, you could emulate it. It's like, we know you can emulate things, but that's also an available option as well.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, let's get the hell out of here. Shorter episode this week, but that's all that's demanded of us right now.
Man, look at that.
Good to see you guys. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
No, man. I'm excited to jump into Dishonored. Honestly, we talked a lot about stealth with Splinter Cell, and just I'm in a stealth mood right now, and I gotta get in while the iron's hot. You know.
Right on. How about you, Dustin? Any closing comments?
Just once again, shout out to our Last Stand merch that's going to be available. This has been a long time coming. I know you guys have been asking about hoodies. We were hoping that we would have them sooner, but obviously production can take a while, and everything is being shipped from us. Remember, Mama Micah is going to be putting together your order.
Right. So she will be.
And it's very exciting. So I love, the hats I'm really excited about. I'm going to like live and die in these hats now. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. We worked hard on it for you.
Well, very well done. And we're excited to see what you guys think. So enjoy that over there. laststandmedia.store if you want to check that out. Otherwise, we'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols Plus, all things Last Stand. We appreciate your love, kindness, and support. That's it. Goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.